Your Excellencies, dear stakeholders of the Fehmarnbelt Fixed Link, dear friends. My name is Lykke Friis. I head a think tank on European affairs, have a past as Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of Copenhagen and former Denmark's Minister for Climate, Energy and Gender Equality. I guess it's also relevant to say that I have two nationalities, Danish and German, so my ambition has always been to connect Germany and Denmark. So I'm very happy to be here because this is obviously about connecting Germany and Denmark, and my first strange name actually means happiness. I will moderate most of this conference. Before I elaborate on the program, I have the honor of giving the floor to Heino Knudsen, President of Region Sjælland. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Denmark, welcome to Region Sjælland, and welcome here to Rødbyhavn. I'm so pleased to see all of you here today to this year's Fehmarnbelt Days Conference. I'm especially happy to be on stage to open the conference with Minister Werner Schwarz from the German state of Schleswig-Holstein. Welcome, Werner. 2 years have passed since the last Fehmarnbelt Days in 2021 in Germany. A lot can happen in 2 years. Maybe you saw it on your way to the conference today, and if you visit the construction site here yesterday. Today, the construction site for the Fehmarnbelt Link is the largest site ever in Denmark. A few years ago, it was nearly nothing but fields. So a lot can happen in only a few years. We are facing a new future and new opportunities. This project will bring Germany, Denmark, and Scandinavia closer together. The fixed link will change the dynamics on both sides of Fehmarnbelt and in Northern Europe. The Fehmarnbelt tunnel will reduce travel time and create a new connection between Scandinavia and Northern Europe and the Central Europe. This is a big opportunity for all of us. That is the reason why we at this conference will continue to discuss how to unlock the potential for our region, how to unlock the potential for a greener and stronger Northern Europe, a greener and a stronger Schleswig-Holstein, a greener and a stronger Region Sjælland. We shall discuss how to build a common future across Fehmarnbelt, and we can only do that together. I'm very pleased to have Minister Schwarz from Schleswig-Holstein with me on the stage today to welcome all of you to the Fehmarnbelt Days here in Rødbyhavn. Schleswig-Holstein and Region Sjælland are aware of our responsibility in building that common future. That is the reason why we have been preparing a new declaration of cooperation. That will be the framework for developing our Fehmarnbelt region together. And it will prepare the transition to a fixed border. Across that, we will move us closer together, will provide new possibilities for both citizens and companies. And actions that will help us to make the Fehmarnbelt region to an attractive region for all. With these words, I want to welcome you all once again and to pass the word to Minister Schwarz. Werner, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, dear Heino, dear Lykke, dear friends from Norway, from Sweden, from Denmark, from Northern Germany, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation to the Danish starting point of the new connection. I'm honored to be here at the heart of the construction place for the world's longest road and rail tunnel. Really, warm greetings from our Minister President Daniel Günther. Unfortunately, he's not able to attend, but as this is an important date for the state government, I'm happy to represent Schleswig-Holstein as a member of the cabinet. Every 2 years, many committed people put a lot of work into the organization of the Fehmarnbelt Days. This year, my special thanks goes to the Danish organizers. Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, the war in the Ukraine by Russia has hurt our entire way of life and our values. It represents a turning point in our peaceful cooperation within the Baltic Sea region. Since the beginning of the war, cross-border forums like the Fehmarnbelt Days become more important than ever. It is important not only for the Fehmarnbelt region or Northern Europe, but for the entire European Union. Our anticipation is rising. Once this important gap in Europe's cross-border transport network is closed, the cross-border cooperation in business, in tourism, in education, research and culture will be easier and better. We had a few starting problems, especially on the German side, as our planning law is more complicated. But we have learned for the future. This way, Germany and Scandinavia can grow even closer together for the benefit of the people and the companies. We will travel from Hamburg to Copenhagen in 2.5 hours instead of 5 hours. This will be a great advantage in various areas of people's daily life. The Fehmarnbelt region, Schleswig-Holstein, and the string mega region between Hamburg and Oslo are full of solutions towards new technologies, sustainable energy, and growth. Please let me give you only one example. Regions and cities between Hamburg and Oslo are already now collaborating with partners from the private and the public sector to establish a hydrogen corridor with a minimum of 14 refueling stations for heavy goods vehicles. I'm proud that this was an initiative of Schleswig-Holstein. This common hydrogen project is a regional initiative to achieve the EU climate targets. This hydrogen corridor is the first of its kind, spanning and thereby connecting 4 countries. It shows what we are able to do within our region if we together plan cross-border transport. The Fehmarnbelt fixed link is not only an infrastructure project, it has the potential to create a new, more lively Danish-German border region. It is up to all of us to make this story a story of success. Dear Heino, this is why you and I will sign the renewal of our partnership declaration between Region Zeeland and Land Schleswig-Holstein in a few minutes. The Fehmarnbelt Days are an excellent opportunity for this. This event is a great opportunity for all interested parties to exchange ideas, various actors from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Northern Germany, and even Finland. I'm pleased that Schleswig-Holstein is part of creating a mega region in the north of Europe. That brings people together and fosters peace and prosperity across borders through intensified cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yep, don't forget to sign it, yeah?
Don't forget. Yes, okay.
At the right place. Man kan de mikros med under. Ja. No. Messer. So, thank you very much. A historic moment. And once again, welcome to the Fehmarnbelt Days. The Fehmarnbelt Tunnel. I must admit that there were times I thought it would never happen, that it would turn into an infrastructure version of Waiting for Godot. And you probably all remember Samuel Beckett's famous play, where Godot never turns up. But I was proven wrong. Now it will happen, as just heard. As a matter of fact, it's just around the corner, 2029. So suddenly, it's urgent to explore the potentials and implications of the tunnel in a regional, mega-regional, and global context. And after the geopolitical earthquake of the 24th of February, you could argue that it's even more important because we are moving towards a world where regionalization is the name of the game and support of globalization is fading. Just think about the new word deglobalization. So you can argue that the Fehmarn region is in the middle of this process, connecting neighboring countries in Northern Europe. And we need to discuss with each other and also start making concrete plans in the spirit of my favorite Elvis song, a little less conversation, a little more action. And being a hobby historian, I always check what happened on the day of the event when I chair meetings like this. And yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, I struck pure gold. Because on the 20th of June, 1987, that was, so the 12th of June, 1987, that was when Ronald Reagan gave his famous Berlin speech where he coined the phrase, "Tear down this wall." And I guess we could argue that here we have the punchline of our conference. This is all about tearing down walls in our region, both the practical ones and the mental ones. Just remember the German expression after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Mauern in den Köpfen, so walls in our heads. So that is why it is so important that we have a brilliant former prime minister who tore down many walls in his home country. We have stakeholders from a larger geography together with knowledge persons, private actors, and relevant politicians. So it's a great combination of panel discussions and active engagement for you. So we are also counting on you to participate once we get into the networks. Our task, which I've already alluded to, is to define the concrete actions that can foster a well-integrated European cross-border region and ignite utilization of the Fehmarnbelt project's full potential across the Danish-German border and beyond to Sweden and to Norway. So, after this introduction, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, former Prime Minister of Sweden and now Chair of Drivkraft, Fredrik Reinfeldt. I first met you just before you became Prime Minister in 2005 on the beautiful Swedish island Gotland in Visby. And as a nerd, I've obviously followed your political career closely. But before moderating this session, actually, I was in Stockholm and spoke to one of your predecessors, Carl Bildt. And he told me the following anecdote, so it must be true. Many years ago, there was a tough battle, a really tough battle, in a youth organization of a party in Sweden. You, Fredrik Reinfeldt, won over the other candidates and became prime minister. What about the other young man? Well, he moved on also to become prime minister, Ulf Kristersson, who is now the prime minister of Sweden. So you should never, never underestimate, this is a lesson for all in this room, or TELT, youth politics is important. You have been prime minister and chairman of the moderates, not to be confused with the Borgen version, or for that matter, the party of the former prime minister of Denmark, Lars Løkke Rasmussen. As a big fan of football for men and women, I'm also very impressed by your new chairman person, because you've been elected to the Swedish Football Association, Svenska Fotbollförbundet. And if there's something football can do, then it is to build bridges and new connections. So also seen from that perspective, we could not have found a better person than Frederik Reinfeldt to basically speak to us and with us at the beginning of this conference. So let's give him a big hand. And welcome to Rødby.
Thank you.
Have you ever been in Rødby before?
Absolutely.
When was this?
When I, with my family, traveled down to Europe in the 80s and the 90s and queued up to come over to Germany. So I catch the problem, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're a happy man now.
I'm a happy man.
Yeah.
I will be a happy man in 2029.
Exactly.
As I understood it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me start with the overall theme of this conference. Regionalization, building strong regions. Do you see that in the same perspective as I alluded to, that this is even more important now that some would argue that we are moving into an age where not necessarily deglobalization, but we have less globalization than before. There's also this new term called friendshoring.
Yeah.
So maybe this is what it's all about. But let's hear what you say.
Well, you mentioned that you've been waiting for a tunnel for very many years. In my country, we waited for a bridge, the bridge between Sweden and Denmark. And of course, we cannot underestimate what happens in countries when you build them closer together. You give the infrastructure to make that happen. And exactly as we have been pointed out, this goes in very deep contrast to the geopolitical movements that we have seen the latest decade. This has been the rise of authoritarian right-wing views and also nation-first perspectives. And of course, what is a nation-first perspective? Very much saying that the nation-state should be protected against what is surrounding the nation-state, and the perspective should be to build the nation-state strong. In US, Donald Trump called this America First. In Britain, it was called Brexit, but the call to arms was said to be take back control. And to say take back control is not to give the control to ordinary people, if you thought that. No, it's about taking back control from markets, from companies, from free flows of people. So the control is to be brought back to a few national politicians. And of course, this is what stands against the view of interactions like we are now looking at. And therefore, this is extremely important, extremely timely, especially, I said, the last decade. I would say it's been 10 to 15 years with this rise of authoritarian right-wing views, but we saw some perspectives after the invasion of Russia into Ukraine of a kind of a reaction towards a different direction. We saw much less support for Donald Trump. We have seen Boris Johnson leave British politics. We didn't see the landslaw victory for Erdogan. We have seen Bolsonaro disappearing. This means something because it's the same kind of logic behind and balancing between what views of the world should be dominant. So I strongly support everything that brings people together against this geopolitical logic that we are seeing in the world.
And what about the overall region? I was just in, as I said, in Sweden, where you celebrated, I guess we could call, the end of the Kalmar Union, 500 years. You left us.
Yeah.
It was Svexit, I guess one could say, Svexit. But now, isn't our region more united since basically the Kalmar Union? We now, I hope, will soon be members of the same security organizations. When you join NATO. Denmark just had its referendum, or last year its referendum, on joining the EU's defense dimension.
Yeah.
So don't you see sort of an even better perspective within sort of the Nordic region to have a greater cooperation?
Yeah, definitely. Lykke Friis made a mentioning of Carl Bildt. He was foreign minister in my government for 8 years. It was fantastic to say that you actually have met him in Stockholm. I think that's a kind of, it rarely happens.
He's in London right now.
Yeah, of course he is. On his way to India, probably. So, so just and he very often said one thing which is very important to understand when it comes to building peace and prosperity. He said, foreign policy should start becoming friends with your neighbors. It's as easy as that, and also as difficult, because most of the countries around the world are in deep conflict with their neighbors, and the hatred is just nearby. So then we can say, well, that's no problem for us, but then you don't know anything about history. I remember very often going out to secondary school in Sweden, asking 17, 18-year-old boys and girls, so Sweden has not been at war for 200 years. I said, this is back in 1814, but against which country did we actually make war in 1814? And no one has any clue. And when I say Norway, they start laughing. That's ridiculous. You can't have a war with Norway. And I could mention that with the Danes, it has been even worse. So what has happened? Is it just 200 years? No, it's going away from this nation first, building imperialism, the idea that we can control each other, that we are rulers, also ruling, neighboring, and only looking at geography. And skipping all that, saying, no, let's be friendly with our neighbors, build our nations, our economies, our families closer, bringing in the ties. This is what happens. So after 200 years, no one can even imagine a conflict between the Nordic countries. If it works here, it can work everywhere. And Fehmarnbelt project is just what you need to support that kind of development.
And this term deglobalization, do you buy that?
Well,
Look upon the US, China,
Yeah.
now also the war.
If globalization means global world, I must admit that the world order as we knew it is dysfunctional. Remember that we said that we will run the world on two legs. The first should be the collective security. This came in after the Second World War. The problem with that is that the collective security should be put on the shoulders of the big ones, the big that should be kind. Security Council of United Nations, United States, United Kingdom, France, China, and Russia. So, total failure. If the big one is the one starting conflicts, if the big one are lying, if the big one are attacking friendly neighbors, then we don't have a collective security system anymore. Well, the second leg then, well, that was the Pax Americana, the idea that, well, alongside that, the US will also support freedom around the world, with mentioning of Ronald Reagan here. The problem is that they kind of said we don't want a job anymore and elected Donald Trump. So now it's time for America first. Self-interest, not global interest, self-interest. Make a deal, fix jobs for Americans, protectionism. And of course, if we don't have the global player, United States, and the collective security broken, then the question is, who runs the world? And sorry to say, it's not girls. It should be, probably. But the ones running the world is in a conflict between a weaker United States not really wanting to, and a stronger China definitely wanting to. And we are squeezed in between. And without global governance, issues like sustainability, rules-based trading, this is what we will see going down. Therefore, I'm worried. And that's a kind of deglobalization. We are not deglobalizing people. We are connecting them through our mobiles. We can have connections throughout the world. But politically, geopolitically, yes, that's where we are.
And you just mentioned the bridge and also what of impact it had also upon you personally. You didn't have to queue anymore down here, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what about the region? I mean, Sweden, Denmark, the so-called Øresunds region.
Yeah.
Now I think it's called Greater Copenhagen.
Yeah, probably.
The Swedes finally sort of agreed to that. But if you look upon that region, what are the lessons learned? And what are maybe the pitfalls for where we are now?
Yeah. As mentioned, the Nordic countries are very close together, but we did not take the same pathway when we looked at Europe. Norway's still outside European Union. Denmark, Sweden is in, but outside of the euro, and Finns are, to our surprise, the only one in everything. So how did that happen? Okay,
Well,
interesting.
interesting.
Yes. So some of the perspective through my political life has been to say, well, we don't need the world outside. We should be closer in the Nordics. But the logic with the Nordics, 27 million inhabitants, and I listen to entrepreneurs and investors. Even though it's very open, very free trade oriented, these are markets that are fairly small. So if you want to become a bigger company and you are trying to be a high-skilled company, which is very much the case in our very developed countries, you will find that all the markets are too small. It's too small to just be in Sweden. It's just too small to be only in Denmark. So where to go? Well, you need to link into Europe. You need to link into the most important trade partner for all of us, namely Germany. But I would say that continues also throughout Northern Europe. Therefore, this regional perspective is so extremely important, because you will find people say, no, we don't need that. But I definitely say we need that. We need a well-functioning internal market, and especially in Northern Europe, where we have a concentration of all our investments, all our development.
And did we do something wrong in the region? Did we tear down the mental walls? Did we also make sure to use the potential students going back and forth? I remember being Pro-Vice Chancellor. It was rather difficult, actually, to get Danish students to go to Lund and also vice versa. It was a bit more easier, I mean, to get the Swedish students to come to Copenhagen. I don't know why, but yeah.
Well, I remember when we spoke about the bridge or all the connections going from Sweden to Denmark, the main interest was in Sweden. Now when we talk about Fehmarnbelt, the main interest...
And why was the main interest in Sweden?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of an idea that everyone want to leave.
Maybe that's not the best sort of
Exactly,
advertisement for this.
Maybe we shouldn't say this with Germans listening. As if everyone is now leaving Sweden with the bridge and now waiting for the belt and then they go. No.
But at least the bridge is a wonderful TV series.
It's fantastic.
Scandic Noir, they all go ballistic.
That's how we love to do it. We kill each other now cross-border and on the bridge. That's
so watch out. Now we may
Nordic
kill each
noir.
other in the tunnel.
Yes, exactly. I would say that integration is not coming directly. You mentioned what I'm doing nowadays. I'm also chair of the hospitality industry in Sweden. And of course, we see, as many see now in the Nordics, our part of the world, that a lot of the long traveling foreigners are not coming back. Less US, you understand, no Russians coming, but also Asians to a lower extent. So what is happening? Well, we have this phenomena that we stay at home, that we have more of our vacations in our home countries, but we see a rapid increase in Sweden from Danes coming over the bridge into Sweden. It has a little bit to do with the Swedish krona. I said we do not have the euro, but the Danes pegged their krona to the euro, and we didn't.
Go shopping in Sweden.
Yeah, go shopping. And the Danes are. So, and I would say that it's much more relaxed now. The flows between Denmark and Sweden are well established. And exactly as you say, Copenhagen is seen as a greater Copenhagen area, also with Malmö. So a few of the discussions we had, I remember that we actually had a lot of people saying that the bridge would be very bad for a lot of things. You couldn't find one person in Sweden that would stand with that point of view today.
And what was the fear? Or what was the...
Well, the
discussion?
fear was that the Danes might come into Sweden, or on the other way.
That's a big fear, I must say.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wouldn't it be possible for Danes to buy a little red, all our summer vacation houses?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And we buy everything, yeah?
You're buying things. I would
Yep.
say that's more Germans than Norwegians, but okay. And the environment, the fishes would be very terrified with the bridge and things like this. You think I'm joking, but that's actually the discussion we were having.
Well, I guess biological diversity is
Yeah, of
something
course,
to watch
but
out for, yeah?
the main thing is that no one would say this today. I think it's also very important to say that that's not saying that environment is not important. That's just a signal also to say that when we discuss environment, we have very much a discussion between people who say, do not do things, and the others saying, do it differently and more sustainable. That's not the same position. The people saying, do not do things, don't want bridges or tunnels, they don't want movement, they don't want trade, they don't want cars, they basically say, do not do things at all. I could understand that better with our dependence on fossil fuel being so clear if you go back in time. But to say this now, for instance, there has been a say that we should have no more motorways, no more, you will have in the tunnel, also possibilities for cars passing into Germany. But after 2029, what kind of cars? If we see the development now in Sweden, it's a rapid shift to electrical vehicles. And if the production of electricity could increase and have no greenhouse gas emissions, this is very sustainable. So we are building for a new future, and to give the signals that it could actually be sustainable to increase infrastructure and to keep on traveling, but with new means. I hope to see this also, of course, with breakthroughs with biodiesel when it comes to airplanes and when it comes to heavy traffic as well. I can see this future. It was tougher before. Now everyone sees this. It's about investments. It's about transforming our society. And therefore, I think the discussion has pushed a bit to accept these kind of investments in a better condition.
And is there any debate in Sweden about the tunnel?
Surprisingly not. Which just shows that you seem to just look very nearby. I can't explain that any better. I'm pretty sure, since there's still a lot of people taking their cars out into Europe, that they will love the day the tunnel opens. Because then we're where we want to be. Then you can sit yourself in a car in Stockholm and actually drive all the way down to Rome or anywhere else you want to go in Europe.
But after having been here, you will now obviously sort of tell the story about the tunnel, that it's coming and so forth.
I will awake the Swedish people and tell them the tunnel is coming.
Mr. Tunnel, yeah, that's going to be it. Yeah, A final question. I mean, when Sweden and Finland joined the European Union, there was a bit of debate about having a so-called Nordic bloc within the EU. I mean, to my mind, that never happened.
No.
Maybe it shouldn't happen, because we also need other friends, such as the Germans. But do you see now that we'll also have sort of a closer political cooperation because we now get this tunnel, or is that completely exaggerated or naive?
No, I don't think that's naive. I think it's good not to work in blocks inside the European Union because you might end up with another block being bigger than yourself, and then it's not so smart. I think it's, to be very honest, the German position has been smarter to become friends with everyone. That's a good position, and it works. That gives Germany influence, but it would not give them influence if they did not follow that pathway of working. I've been there for many years. I've seen this happening. Germany is very good at listening both to other big countries, maybe sometimes too much to a few other big countries, but they're also very good at listening to small countries. So we trying to say we don't see ourselves with any blocks. We could speak with Spaniards and Greeks, but of course you're right that very often we see similarities between the Nordic countries and also linking ourselves to Norway. And also the Baltic countries wanting to be very close. And it boils down to that we are more open to trade, we are smaller economies, we are very dependent on rules-based trading and the inner market. So in that sense, yes.
And you have now proven to all of us that you will be ambassador of the tunnel once you return to Stockholm. This may sound as a very personal question, but where will you go this summer?
Wow. Well,
maybe far away?
No, well, the truth is I'm a little bit, as I said, I will probably stay a lot first in Sweden, but you got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Since I'm now chair of Swedish Football Association, I will put myself on a plane and go to New Zealand, where the World Cup will start in 20th of July. And I'm sorry to say that the male side of football in Sweden is not that impressive all the time. Could we put it like that? Or at least we had a very tough 2022. But the women's side are ranked number 3 in the world, close to Germany actually. That doesn't mean immediate success, but that means something, that we are still very much up in the toughest of competition. So I look very much forward. It's a World Cup between New Zealand and Australia, so I might actually go through and back, a little bit depending on how they score and how it goes. A month in Down Under, that's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds great. So you are now the ambassador of the tunnel, I'll be ambassador of the World Cup for women in Australia and New Zealand. Remember to watch it. Yeah. This basically concludes our session. And while you said this about the Nordic region, I completely agree that we are now no longer fighting wars against each other, but we fight when it's football. I still like that term when Denmark plays against Sweden. It's the arveopgør, so arve-fjende-opgør. Is there a Swedish term for that?
No, not really.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is we have the same view when we meet Finland and Norway, so we have a lot of problems.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. Okay, let's give a big hand of applause to
Thank you.
Frederik Reinfeldt.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will just do a bit of reordering. Didn't we forget a film, by the way?
The film is coming later.
The film is coming later. Okay, so we'll wait for that. Just going to move this over here. Mm-hmm. Ooh. I guess you can all just stretch your legs, but don't leave, but you're allowed sort of to stand up, sort of not to, because this may take a few more minutes. It is so exciting that we're not standing. Okay, let's start again. We now have a session called Mechanisms and Game Changers in a Thriving Cross-Border Region. And now that we were in the business of tearing down walls inspired by Ronald Reagan, I cannot resist telling you an anecdote about another Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme. Because Olof Palme was once scheduled to meet the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan, he was not too happy about that. So he said, well, isn't Olof Palme a communist? No, the advisor said, he's rather an anti-communist. And the response by Ronald Reagan was, I don't care what kind of communist he is. So I think tearing down walls and really caring about something, as you already sort of have heard, we do really care about the new cross-border region. But there is no doubt, and we also heard that from the former Prime Minister, Frederik Reinfeldt, that we need to do something before it actually happens, before the tunnel opens in 2029. So this is what we'll do now. We'll hear about the various barriers, we'll hear about the potential, and how we can actually transform it. And talking about knowledge and maybe also confusion, about 10 years ago, a Danish newspaper realized that Danes had great difficulties with the long name Fehmarnbelt Fixed Link. So the newspaper decided to do a competition amongst its readers. What would they call the tunnel? And the winner was Dosenbierverbindung. And well, that tells you that was then, this is now. But it also tells you that it is not a Selbstläufer, as the Germans would say. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to work for it. This mega region will not happen automatically. Work has to be carried out. And that's where my first panel comes in. The overreaching question is obviously, how can we make sure that the region actually becomes a success? And what can we learn from other regions? And now I'm really sort of looking whether I actually have my panel, but I guess they are somewhere in the room or in the tele. Yes, wonderful. So basically, let's now have the panel up here. One is still in a plane or in a taxi. Karen Maguire is one of our panelists. Stefan Seidler, I'll wait with him. Åse Ågren Wikström, jawohl. And then we have Dr. Carsten Schulz. You were up there, excellent. That should make up the panel right now. And while you find your seats, I will introduce Anna Lundgren. Coming up. Okay, wonderful. You are Senior Research Fellow at Nordregio, a leading Nordic research institution within broad research fields of regional development, policy and planning. And you specialize in cross-border relations. So what are the core barriers and opportunity when you look upon a region like this? What should we look out for, and what are the various pitfalls?
I would say that there are enormous potentials in cross-border collaboration. We heard about the trade. We heard about the potential of creating economic growth, the potential of creating large labor markets, extended labor markets.
I think the former Prime Minister left his pen. Has he left?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll keep it. But maybe one of the organizers could just come up here and take this pen. Yeah. He may actually want to have it. Yes? Thank you very much. Sorry, if you just could start all over again. Yeah, I lost my concentration. Yeah. Yep.
So a lot of potentials related to economic growth, to extended labor markets, to the trade, of course, to learning from one another, sharing best practices, and that was, as was also mentioned, creating security and resilience, building relationships. So very many potentials, but as you also mentioned, many pitfalls and many difficulties. Cross-border collaboration is not easy. It's a lot of formal and informal rules that you stumble across. It was mentioned earlier here, the planning regulation on the German side was more difficult than on the Danish side. So coping with those formal and informal rules is a major challenge, and to find mechanisms and find ways to do that, I would say that are the mechanism and the success factors to look for.
And how do you prepare for that? I mean, what about, tax regulation? I mean, that's still a major issue between Danes and Swedes. I mean, that is very complicated to move, and also to keep your pensions and so forth. Is that something we should already work on now? Or can you work on this already now?
I'm not familiar with the specific situation here between Denmark and
I'm very disappointed.
and,
Yeah, okay.
and Germany, but of course, I mean, the sooner the better. And what it boils down to, I would say, it's very much about building networks, building relationships, asking questions. We stumble across over and over again in the Nordic cooperation. We think that we are so similar between the Nordic countries, and we are. We have a lot of similarities, but we also have differences when it comes to our regulations, our legal systems, the way we practice things, the way we do things that have evolved over time. We do things differently, and we have to identify those similarities and differences to be able to get over them. So to build relations, to build networks, to identify the key stakeholders. I think that is also a key element now, creating this green hub, which is an aim of this mega region, to identify the key stakeholders and make sure to bring them on board. To ask them questions and to have them committed to the process. I think that are some of the key mechanisms that are necessary.
Good, excellent start. What is your reaction? Karen Maguire, Head of Local Employment, Skills and Social Innovation at the OECD. What are your reflections also on the overall topic? And thank you so much for coming.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us, and a huge thanks to all of the sponsors for bringing us here today. And the OECD is pleased to also collaborate with a number of the different partners here. Well, first, of course, what Anna said, I completely agree with. There are all these sort of general economic and social benefits that one can derive. When you have lower travel times, it effectively increases the potential labor market. When you lower the cost of doing business, it facilitates these trades. When you reduce distance, you can also help with innovation processes, because innovation processes, there are parts that can be done very transnational, but there's also a part that really depends on proximity, physical proximity, and they call it something in the air. And so this is a new opportunity. And it also helps what economists like to call, in a sense, borrowed agglomeration. So you get the benefits of having scale, but by improving the links between the city networks within that mega region, you're able to try to achieve that scale without some of the costs associated with some of the very large cities with congestion, housing prices, etc. So that's sort of the general consideration. I mean, I completely agree with Anna that starting to plan ahead to understand what those opportunities are, getting political visibility. So we have a number of leading politicians who are championing in this in their different respective areas, but also recognizing that these functional ties within the mega region will depend on what the function is. So there might be different parts within the mega region that are more involved in some areas. So maybe the labor market, it's a bit more localized for parts of the cross-border area, but maybe for trade and innovation, it goes much farther beyond. And it also means that this is one new link that will be a game changer. It's a hard infrastructure, and we need to complement that with soft infrastructure, and that's where I think all of the champions working on cross-border day-to-day will help build that soft infrastructure. But it also means that for the others to benefit, they too need to be able to have smooth links between the different elements within the mega region. So that's another thing that can be thought of as you anticipate, and those links can be transport, but those links can also be intermediaries on business, on labor market, etc.
Excellent. And what do you mean by this soft infrastructure?
Well, you have people.
People, okay, that's important.
And people, they are involved as workers. They are involved as entrepreneurs. You have the public sector. You have the private sector. You have trade unions. You have all of this set of institutions that can really help get the most out of the benefits of having developed this fixed link. They need to know each other. They need to talk to each other. They need to trust each other, and it builds what I would call sort of an approach that's relational as opposed to transactional. One of the challenges in cross-border, of course, is that everyone wants to get back what they put in. on every single activity. And that's a very challenging political issue, right? Nobody wants to say they put in money and it all went someplace else. But if you think long term, then you need to think about a relationship. And maybe in any individual project, one might get a little bit more than the other, but the long-term relationship helps build the positive benefits for all. And that's a challenge that the champions every day are trying to address.
Well, talking about then staff infrastructure, I was speaking to, sorry to get to continue in the line, we just ended with Frederik Reinfeldt football, but apparently there's already sort of a football tournament taking place where you then have sort of people here, kids from this side of the tunnel sort of playing against the other side of the tunnel, so Germans. So I guess that just already proves the point that you then get buy-in also from the younger generation, and you suddenly realize that this is actually a much broader region than you thought, also as a kid.
Yeah, and the Citizen Days, and I think these other activities really help because you get political visibility when you spend money, of course, but you also get political visibility when the people themselves care because they're your voters. And so that's another big issue. And infrastructure projects help make that more visible. Innovation projects, it's a little bit more challenging to get that visibility with citizens. But I think building on the infrastructure of civil society, that can also help engender these new ideas that they themselves will come up with. No one person can identify all these opportunities. You need everyone on the job looking for these opportunities and making them happen.
Well, I can tell you and the audience that I participated yesterday in the Citizens' Day, and up here we had 5 cakes. Germans and Danish students had basically made these wonderful cakes. Bagdysten, what is that called? Or the große Backen, as it's called in Germany. What is that called in English? Do we know? This big sort of a basic program where you then bake these wonderful cakes, and then there's a judge saying, well, you won or you didn't or whatever. Okay, I can see you don't watch that program. Neither do I, so it's very difficult sort of participating as a so-called referee. But the point was that the cakes were, as I indicated earlier, made by Danes and Germans, and they all had to see whether they could create a cake which was inspired by this region, which was pretty difficult, but then they made the tunnel and then they put in some wind turbines and so forth. So they actually managed to prove your point that there is a possibility to have this cooperation before. So, Åsa Ågren Wikström, among your many affiliations, let me see if I get this right, you are deputy chairman of the board of the Scandra Alliance, which provides an arena for citizens and regions to collaborate on climate-smart multimodal transport connectivity at the interface to sustainable regional development between Scandinavia and the Adriatic Sea. Did I get this right?
I think you got it really right.
Woo!
Yes.
So what do you actually do?
What do we actually do? Well, I'm also the vice chair of the Kvarken Council EDTC, which also is why I'm here. And thank you so much for having us, because we come from the north and the Fehmarnbelt link is very, very important for us through all of this. We are a cross-border development platform, the EDTC, Kvarken Council, with members from northern Sweden and mid-Finland, and strives to promote and develop a strong and viable, well-connected region, mainly through different development projects. And the Council is the fully and the only fully Nordic European grouping of territorial cooperation. And we are active local, regional, national, Nordic and EU level. So we are everywhere, I should say. We try to be anyway. And we are still, of course, I think all of us hoping and working towards a quick ending of this horrible war Russia has on Ukraine, and we have mentioned this already. And this has also put the spotlight on our transport and infrastructure for a military mobility perspective for our regions. It's of course also the NATO membership. Finland has joined, and we are doing this, and Sweden will soon, very soon we hope. And of course all of this will have an impact on our region during the infrastructure and transport issues. The Russian door between Finland and Russia is closed and will probably be so for, well, a long time to come. And here we are talking about a border that covers about 1,300 kilometers, so it's a long border. And this means in practice that we in our region must start looking at transport issues from a completely new perspective that we haven't done before, and also to plan future transport solutions based on this new reality. Well, if you just for 1 second imagine that a conflict situation arises in the Baltic Sea around the Åland Sea and the Gulf of Finland, then all ports in Finland are closed, and the majority of Sweden's ports as well. So this is a worst case scenario, obviously, but we need to prepare and act to be able to do something about this. Of course, we all hope it won't happen, but we need to be, anyway, have an awareness about it, I think. And this will not only be important for our region or our countries to ensure functioning freight transport in the region, but also for the whole of Europe, because a large part of all important raw materials is to be found in Northern Europe. So we are all benefiting from this. So this is also why the Fehmarnbelt link is extremely crucial for us. We see now total investments amounts to hundreds of billions of euros in northern Finland, Sweden and Norway right now as we speak. And all these projects and raw materials need also to be transported to the European markets, of course. And we have in our region already started taking measures in this area in the forms of projects. And for example, one example is the Barents Corporation and the Kvarken Council EGTC, and we have submitted a project application called New North. And we will here review how the new geopolitical situation affects all transport needs in our region, and how we will develop our new routes together. And among other things, we will look at green transport corridors, resilience, security of supply, and electric aviation, which is very important for our northern regions, and of course, even in the south. And we have also decided to do a detailed feasibility study of a fixed link of the Kvarken Strait. So pretty much the same as the Fehmarnbelt, only in the north. So within our Committee for Traffic and Infrastructure Issues, we have also started a dialogue between the military defense forces in Finland and Sweden on this matter. And of course, we understand completely that this issues isn't for the local or regional level with security and such, and we don't own this, of course. But we are raising our hands and saying, hey, we want to be an active part of this to make all this happen and work even in times of not crisis or unpeace. So, and why do we do this? Well, we want to make this as good as possible for all of us, of course. That's the main reason why we do this. And I can't agree more when saying it boils down to relations amongst one another. And at the end of the day, trust. Do you trust each other to do this? The Kvarken Council EGTC celebrated 50 years of formalized cooperation last year. So we have a long tradition of doing this, simply because we aren't so many in our regions. We have needed to find each other to do this. And we have a saying that do what you can with what you have where you are. And this is a normal state of mind for those of us who live in the northern part of Sweden and Finland. But we also recognize that you can do more if you do it together in cooperation. And that's why we are very pleased to be a part of this conference and just connect the dots. So thank you.
And where did the Adriatic Sea get into this?
Well, we are a part of the Scandria Alliance at the Kvarken Council, and we joined just a year ago. I'm sorry, but this pandemic issues, your time is a bit mixed up. So sorry. I say around a year ago, so I'm not totally wrong then. And we are the most Nordic part of the Scandria Alliance to connect with down to the Adriatic Sea, because any chain, as you might know, it is the weakest link is always the strength of the whole chain. So that's why we want to be a part of this and be an active part of the total European corridor for transport. So.
And the border between Finland and Russia, which you mentioned, I last year had the great sort of opportunity to go to the border between Russia and Estonia, so the city of Narva, and I was struck by the fact that there was a big project going on which has just been stopped, obviously, between Russia and Estonia, trying to get to create a region up there, so to speak. I was just wondering, what do you know? What similar attempts were made between Finland and Russia?
Well, I don't have any detail since obviously last year and all this new war on Ukraine, it's stopped because everything stopped.
I was referring to the period before. I presume there were many activities there.
Yeah, we have quite a lot actually, both in Norway, Finland, Sweden, and with Russia, of the Barents region, which is the most up north parts. So we have had quite a lot of cooperation with some of the Russians also, but yeah.
Yeah, but we just heard from the former Prime Minister that there will not be a war between Denmark and Sweden, I presume, neither between Germany and Denmark. And that it was obviously a brilliant point. Not a war between Denmark and Germany. Here we have the most important member of the German Bundestag. So thank you so much for coming. And why is Stefan Seidler the most important member of the Bundestag? Obviously because you represent the Danish-German sort of relationship, I guess one could say, and actually you also keep a close eye on the entire Nordic region. So you have a lot on your plate, but you are a very active man. So now that you have arrived and you haven't heard sort of the previous discussion and being a living bridge yourself, what are your reflections about the tunnel that will soon in 2029 be opened?
Well, thank you, and nice for being here. The reason why I'm late is the queue on the island of Funen, so I didn't catch my ferry. I'm so sorry. The next time I'll get the other way around, and probably we have the tunnel. No, of course, this is a big opportunity for this region. This is a big opportunity for development. And we know, everybody, that you introduced me as the bridge between Denmark and Germany, and I'm living in the Danish-German border region and the Jutland corridor. And therefore, we already have a lot of development over there. So I think it's very important that we don't build parallel structures, so that we over here in the Fehmarnbelt region, probably learn a little bit from the Danish-German region as it is today, but on the other side that we also help each other, because you have a lot of new possibilities, which I also think are very important to also to have in the other region, at the Jutland corridor. So I think that's very important. But let me also be very honest, because now I'm sitting at the Bundestag and I can see how fast it goes, or on the other hand, how slow it goes. We can see in other regions where we also have big infrastructure projects that the German government is not that fast in adapting and in having all the godkendelser, the improvements you need.
Permitting, is the expression.
Probably when you look to the Brenner Pass, the Hinterlandanbindung there on the German side is not that fast as it should be, and the other side also to the St. Gotthard tunnel. So maybe I'm not so optimistic for the Fehmarnbelt tunnel anymore. You and we all still have to make a lot of pressure on the German government so that it gets fast. And for a few days ago I talked to the Deutsche Bahn, to the German railway, and they are also very skeptic if everything goes as it should be. So I'm happy for this project. I think it will be very good for European togetherness and cooperation. But on the other hand, if this should succeed, and I think it should, then we all have to make a lot of pressure still to the German government. And let me also tell you one thing more, because I not only talked to the Deutsche Bahn, I also talked to the CEO of the DSB, the Danish railway.
He's busy today, I can tell you.
And he's a tough guy. Yeah. He's a really tough
Since
guy.
no trains are running, apparently.
Yeah, Flemming Jens, very tough guy. And he told me, well, Seidler, when we have the Kattegat connection, and you will go from Flensburg or from Kiel or probably from Hamburg to Aarhus, then you don't need the Jutland corridor anymore, because then we go through the to the Kattegat connection, through the Fehmarnbelt connection, directly to Hamburg. So, of course, as a representative of the German-Danish border region and the Jutland corridor, I also encourage for your help to help us that we don't have a missing link the other way around in the future. I know for some of you the Kattegat connection is far away and probably some kind of fairy tale.
Waiting for Godot.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if the CEO of DSB already counts on it, then it is a fact. Maybe it is a fact that it will come. And I think it's also all up to us all that we don't, that we don't forget the other part of Denmark, which is the Jutland corridor. And therefore, I'm also very happy that in an organization like String, that you also have the region of southern Denmark with you, the city of Kiel, and all of Schleswig-Holstein, and we work together to build some kind of a triangle, and not only two corridors, but a kind of a triangle in this region for the development.
And mentioning Kiel, I'll soon introduce our final panelist. But I want to go back to Hinterlandanbindung, what a brilliant term. And the Prime Minister, Frederik Reinfeldt, or the former Prime Minister, he told us earlier that, well, the bridge, Swedes, well, didn't really care about the bridge, or they didn't know about the bridge until it was there. I just wanted to ask you, if I would go to Munich tomorrow, or would go to Bamberg, or would go to Dortmund, or wherever, what would they actually know about this tunnel, if anything?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. But at least if I went to Schleswig, or if I
if you
went
go
other
to
places in
Hamburg,
Germany.
if you go to Hamburg, they know a lot of it. So when you're in the northern part of Germany, of course, everybody knows about this project. But if you're in the southern part of Germany, nobody knows about it. Well, I myself didn't know of the problems at the Brenner Pass, at the St. Gotthard tunnel as well. So, of course, there's also a big thing for you in communications. And if you have ministers coming from the southern part of Denmark, southern part of Germany, in the federal government, of course, you also have to explain them how important this is for the development and the cooperation in the northern part of Germany, and also tell everybody that most of the export is going this way from the Scandinavian countries to Germany. And I think you as Scandinavians have an open window opportunity right now, because in the German federal government everybody looks to the northern countries, especially to Denmark, because you have some great and progressive solutions in energy and digitalization, in all other areas as well, but especially energy, and they want to cooperate with you. So there you have a kind of a good thing which they want to eat. So show it.
So a platform to cooperate on,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. So now we get to the final participant in our panel, Dr. Carsten Schulz from my mother's hometown, Kiel, where you're a professor at the Christian Albrechts University, to Kiel. And I understand that one of your points is exactly that one should not only look upon the region as such, but one should also make sure that, for instance, German companies and German universities also focus upon the broader region and not forget the potential of Schleswig-Holstein, Hamburg, and the rest of Denmark. Is that true? Is that sort of one of your major points? Otherwise, pick another one.
Morning, mange tak for having me. Yes, actually, I want to stress 2 points. Talk about stakeholders. I think a very important stakeholders in this game to set up this cross-border region is, of course, University of Applied Sciences, all research institutions, because if we want to have more than an infrastructure, then we need to think this region as a knowledge region, as an ecosystem for knowledge creation and innovation. And in this game, of course, all the university actors on all sides play important roles. Not only that universities create the knowledge, this is later on the basis for innovation, but I think the universities can also play a very particular role in creating this joint culture, the joint mindset, also, of course, the understanding language-wise, etc. And And if we don't think so, that to put all that research institutions in the middle of that ecosystem, I think we miss a lot of opportunities when we talk about the Fehmarnbelt Tunnel. So summing up this discussion so far, I think yes, the universities were not mentioned so far.
Maybe in the soft
little
infrastructure,
bit
yeah.
soft power, but not that straight. And talking about university-industry collaboration and impact, of course, this is a very difficult game. Because we have not only different national cultures, we have also different cultures between university and industry. And how can we actually support both sides to create that absorptive capacity that both actually really want and are able to collaborate with the other sides? And the game becomes even more difficult when we talk about cross-border innovation ecosystems. And maybe the last point in this regard, I think we also need to rethink how do we innovate? How do we create knowledge? How do we do research and innovation? In particular, because it is also highlighted several times that we not only want to innovate, we want to have higher sustainability. So we want to have responsible innovation in a sense. And so the question would be, how can we actually anticipate also not intended outcomes of innovation, in particular also when it comes to infrastructure. How can we set up a project not only to do good, but also to avoid harm? How can we include stakeholders from different sides, also skeptical stakeholders? Because what we of course always do is we integrate stakeholders, but only the friends. But how can we actually integrate skeptical stakeholders in every kind to learn from their perspectives? And of course, at the end, it's a cultural thing. So how can we be responsive and reflexive enough to actually listen to the different needs in all different parts of the regions, in all different parts of the university industry games, and how can we set up a new kind of more agile innovation process in this regard?
Yeah, and when you mentioned universities, as I said in my introduction, I was Pro-Vice Chancellor of University of Copenhagen for 9 years. And one of the most difficult parts of getting universities to cooperate was not so much the researchers, because they're kind of used to cooperating, but it was actually the students. I mean, persuading them to go across the border, in particular also because the various university degrees do not necessarily fit together. So you would have your ETSS sort of points, as it's called, so how important and how many points you get for a specific course would not fit with a German one, for instance, or not fit with a Swedish one. So I presume you would have to look into that and prepare well ahead of 2029, because otherwise you're not going to have this cross-border or this soft infrastructure materializing.
Absolutely. If talk universities, of course, talk in particular about students and educational programs. We are currently setting up a double master program with Roskilde University, and we have also...
so between whom then?
Yeah, we as a Kiel University, focusing in this case on business administration, and the Roskilde University colleagues will also focus on this, and we will focus on this overall part of innovation management, and how can we actually have a joint educational program where we also have joint projects together with companies. So one of the core elements in this particular study program will be that we have teams of students from the Danish side and the German side go together to companies, of course, based on our research, and we do together projects, we as researchers, the companies, in particular the students, but from both sides. But also talking about challenges, of course, the difficult part seems to be to find German companies for this endeavor.
And why is that the case?
I think actually we did also a little market research. What you do, of course, in research, you do research, and actually we did a little survey around companies. We asked around 35 companies in Holstein, and basically they said we are not interested in doing business together with Denmark. It's completely the different picture because also the Roskilde colleagues are the Danish companies. And of course, as you already heard, for Danish companies, the German market is the most important one, but not the other way around. In particular, not if you look at that local companies, which are smaller companies, also very much focusing on service industries, etc. And so I believe that one of the big things we have to solve is to find also on our side companies who want to do this kind of joint also applied research project in teaching.
Well, thank you for highlighting that also, because this should not be a happy hallelujah session. It's very important that we also discuss the various problems that we see, the various sort of challenges with regards to creating this region. But Stefan, going back to you, what's the most important lesson for this region that you can draw from the region where you are almost every day when you're not in the Bundestag?
Well,
only two.
Don't build too many forums.
Forums, yeah.
Yeah, probably you already have this in the Fehmarnbelt region. There's the Fehmarnbelt Business Council, and then there is the Fehmarnbelt Committee, and so on. We have the same in our region. There's the Region Sønderjylland-Slesvig, then there's a cooperation between Schleswig-Holstein and southern Denmark. Then there's a cooperation between the municipalities, and everything is good and everything is important. But if you have too much of them, you have too many cooks. And
Viele Köche verderben den Brei.
Ganz genau, Lücke.
Yeah.
And the other thing is also, I think it's very important that you very much in the start, and I think the scientific part is in charge of that, to talk about the same things. Let me come with one example. 4 years ago, we thought that we could cooperate in the sector of welfare technology. And if you look on the German side, it's a completely different thing than on the Danish side. And everybody in the beginning, they thought they were talking about the same thing, but they didn't. So you have to make, I only know the Danish and the German word, eine Begriffserklärung, eine Begriffsaufklärung from the very start in the areas where you want to work together. And that's the next thing. Define the sectors, clusters, where you have common potential, and then agree on working together in that and have a clear strategic aim in cooperating there. Not trying to do everything, but do it, and also don't forget the people. I think that's also very important if you want to have commitment, not just in business, but also at the people.
Going back to your point at the beginning. So some of you may have to think about whether you should abandon your forum that you just established, at least not sort of create new ones. That was a very clear sort of suggestion by Stefan. And now we have 2 rounds left here. So this will be the difficult round, or bit difficult rounds, where you're only allowed to point to one opportunity. We're going to start with the opportunity round, 1 for this particular region. And after that, as you may have guessed, we move to the most important pitfall. So this is now your elevator pitch. So let's start. The best or the most important opportunity for this region.
I think the theme of today is really about how to position this as a green hub. And one of the things I would flag is we just did a report recently looking at green jobs, looking at the tasks they do at any sector. This region has, when you look across all of the sort of string regions, higher than average shares of their labor force that are already in green task types of jobs. And so I think this is really a great opportunity. I want to reiterate the cluster sort of mappings and the technology and knowledge mappings, because this is how you get critical mass and complementarity in order to be successful in a global marketplace and distinguish yourselves, and that has tended to work best.
So Green Hub was your opportunity, most important opportunity.
Well, I see from our point of view, it's a common goal.
Common goal, yeah?
You have to have a common goal, like we had when we saw we didn't have a functioning ferry between Umeå and Vasa in Sweden and Finland. So we built that one. And we worked quite a lot of years to get this one, and now it's up and running and the most environmental ferry in the world. So going back to this, it's trust is the key here. You need to trust each other, and you have to have a common goal. And then you need to see what is really important, and all of the rest, like universities and everything else, will follow. That's our...
Very good points, but it sounded a bit more like pitfalls to me. So what is the biggest opportunity for this region?
I think the most biggest opportunity, as I see it, coming up from the north, is just to get this region flourishing even more. Because when you connect the infrastructure, we see that everything else gets the foundation to be as successful as they can be. So every other innovations and such will follow when you get the functioning infrastructure. So that's why this link is so important.
So synergy, one could sort of sum it up to. Yes, Christian?
Yeah, it's becoming more difficult now.
And I guess more and more difficult as we go along, yeah?
Maybe adding to this point that I think we have potential not only to have a green region, but also focusing on the right technologies for us, like biotechnology, technology related to the agro business, etc. And together with this, we also have a region with a very high quality of life standard. And seeing in particular the developments over the last 2 or 3 years, we have a movement away from the big cities to the countryside, and that also gives us possibilities to actually find new companies who want to be set up a site here, or also who want to really start up the business in this region. And if you combine it, not only having a hospitality business, but also actually the content, the technology focus, that also will lead to a nice country with nice jobs.
Excellent. I remind you one opportunity. So what's your most important opportunity?
I think the stakeholder engagement that we see already here, all you people being here today, the Citizens' Day, the day before, I think that is something to build on.
Excellent. Stefan?
Well, I think it's regionalism.
Yeah.
I think we are in a time where we see that the globalization is getting a little pullback. Probably we don't want to trade so much with India, or buy our ships in Korea, or buy our meat in Southern America, or plastic in China. So we have to have strong regional structures in these times where we have our own resources. And I think this is the biggest opportunity. And the other opportunity is that the regions sometimes are quite quicker in cooperating and building new structures than when we are talking about the big national governments who have to work together. So big encouragement to you, because you're already doing that, and build further on that. That's the most important thing, I think, and the biggest opportunity.
You almost sounded like the former Swedish Prime Minister, but you didn't cheat
didn't
because
listen
you were not there.
Sorry.
You were caught in traffic like he was earlier. So now we're on to the final round, pitfalls, the most important pitfall for this region.
I think taking for granted that it will happen magically. So I think it's really making sure that there's this anticipation, this identification of opportunities. And I agree also with the sort of targeting, because I think that in order for these kinds of collaborations to be successful, you need the wins. You need to document the wins so that people see it. So I think that'll be very, very important as we go forward. Sometimes these cross-border collaborations, they get to a plateau, and then you need to give a kickstart to the next level.
Important point.
I come back to the common goal, and to make an action plan, so you also see that it is actually happening, because we can talk and talk and talk, and we need that also, but when we have done that, we need to act. So I think this is also important, because when our citizens see for their own, like yesterday, we arrived so late, so we missed this, but I understand that when you see this, what is really going on, it's just not talk anymore. It is happening, so a common goal and act.
I can confirm that, because it was really sort of mind-boggling to see what's going out there, and once you see it, the big whole, you realize it will actually change the infrastructure, and for that matter also our lives. Pitfall number 1. Or only pitfall, yeah?
Only one. Understood. I think a pitfall is that the region is concentrating very much on the big cities like Copenhagen and Hamburg, Greater Copenhagen. And the pitfall is how can we actually fill up the gap in between? Because it's nice, but it's also relatively empty in between. And how can we do this?
Excellent. So fill the gap and make sure not to forget the cities and the regions around this particular region. Yes?
Very good comments. I can
sure.
only agree to what has been said, but also to do the homework, the nitty-gritty homework, referring back to your example.
Hausaufgaben, as the Germans would say, yeah?
Referring back to the example of the German enterprises not being so interested here. So you need to do the homework. You need to understand the partners, what they're interested in, what's the win-win situation here. You need to get down with that. And also to build trust. I think that is essential. And that goes together with stakeholder engagement, with creating goals, joint goals, etc. That is also a process of building trust, a process of learning about one another. So do the homework and build trust too.
Important points. It's now very dangerous to say to a politician that you get the last word, because you can see the time down there that we have 4 minutes left. You're not allowed to use all the 4 minutes, but your major pitfall.
I'll try to make it short. Actually, I think the homework is also very important. I said that before, so I'll take another one which also is very dangerous. It's protectionism.
Yeah.
Don't think that you are the only one who own a certain area and be afraid of sharing it with the others in this club. Let's talk about wind energy probably. If you say, well, that's our area, we don't want to share it with Hamburg or with Copenhagen, the big parts, because when they get the little finger, they take all the hand. I think it's very important that you are also in the cooperation very clear on which competences you have and where you can build a synergy. And I think therefore keep away with protectionism and have a real open-minded cooperation.
So many good points. I think one of the most important ones was that there's a risk of this plateau, that we may actually at a certain stage, after we have gained trust and after we've created all our plans and all our homework, then maybe we may end up in a situation where it's difficult then to improve the cooperation even further. I think that was very important. It was also important to be concrete. What will we actually cooperate on? And then apparently not create yet another forum, because that's not the problem. The problem is to create action. And you definitely, there was action this panel. Let's give them a big hand. And don't go away, because now we get the boring part, where I'll now say a few practical sort of words. What will happen now is that there is a break. That's always very good, I presume, a networking break, so you can tear down the walls and create more trust among each other. And before you go out...
Welcome this afternoon. Before I really go into the session, we're going to show the video that you probably missed this morning in the first place because it didn't work. And now we see that video, and afterwards we start the session. Thank you. So I thank you for that impressive video as the introduction to today's afternoon session. So my name is Arno Probst. I'm the chairman of the Fehmarnbelt Business Council, an organization comprising business organizations in southern Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, northern Germany. And we're constantly, for 11 years now, working on that issue, especially in the political process that we had during the last couple of years, also from the German side, and promote the Fehmarnbelt fixed link. And I'm happy to moderate today, and even though it's quite hard actually to be here. I mean, you remember this morning we had this really great moderation from Lykke Friis, and now it's me. I'm sorry for that one, but I try to do my best. I will not even come close to that, of course, but I'm trying to do my best. And I have some really good help with this session today, because we were a lot talking about possibilities this morning and how we should do things, and how maybe the way we work in should be dealt with. But now we have the real entrepreneurs in this session. We have the ones here that are the makers, the doers, the entrepreneurs that are already here. I was astonished this morning to hear from one side that potentially there's less interesting from the German perspective to go to business to southern Denmark. I can't really cope with that one, and we show you that it's the opposite. So we have quite a good number of entrepreneurs in the next two parts of the session. We parted it in two different parts, and I saw you working there. So we were a lot talking about collaboration this morning. And I saw there was a lot of collaboration going on around lunchtime. Before lunchtime, you were standing around in these tables with different issues, working together already from your different perspectives on the same issue. And this is a very good example for what we're talking about the whole day. So it already works. And from a business perspective, we have really good examples how it already works. And the session is going to be how these heroes of the first movers or early movers here within the scope of possibilities are acting already at present, given the status that we are in at the fixed link building at the moment. So for the first session, I asked to come on the stage Marco Dibbern von Pepe & Söhne and Andreas Fuchs von Robert C. Spies. Please welcome. Have a seat. Free choice. We have 6 seats for 2 people. So I asked Marco in the first place, maybe Pepe and Söhne. You've been here recently in business now for a couple of months or years. Could you explain what your firm is actually doing from a perspective that you came in here in Denmark, and what is your view on the things that you achieved since you started here? How was your reception in Denmark from your perspective? So maybe you can tell us a bit about your firm and your business model and what you're doing.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks for the warm welcome. Pepe & Söhne is a project development company from Bremen, in the northern part of Germany. And our core strength is to develop logistic, industrial, and commercial real estate. And for now we are on the market since more or less 10 years. We're a really young company with a young team of about nearly 40 people at the moment. And in our strategy, we always try to find new possibilities, new markets, and new holistic chances to grow this business and partnerships. That is very important for us. And when we got to know the possibilities Fehmarnbelt Tunnel is bringing to the region, on the German side and also on the Danish side, we came in closer discussions with our longtime partner from Bremen, Robert C. Spies, but Andreas will tell later on a bit more about that. And then we started our internal discussions of how to participate in this and how to grow the business and the chances. We are always keeping an eye on to plant this in the area.
So that was your idea, to establish a business here then?
Yes.
So how did you do it then?
We had some very interesting meetings here in the place, and what we discovered in the first time was that there are really, really strong partners here in this place, driven, for example, by Business Lolland Falster. They are always available, always online, and always try to put all the questions and issues you have as a new company to join this place are with a helping hand and a warm welcome to grow this and to go ahead. And with these ideas we collected, we were convinced that this is a good region and to grow this. And now, 1 year after, we have found so many new contacts, companies coming from Germany, companies coming from Denmark, and have grown a little network in the place, and now we try to get the best out of it.
Okay. And what is the initial project you're working in here?
Yes, our initial project is called Hub 48. It's a commercial light industrial business park in the area around Maribor, a house park, and it's called Hub 48, belonging to the Exit 48. And this is a combined development for rental space, for logistics, for craftsmen, for commercial issues, where the tenants and the companies in place can grow their own business.
Okay, so it's development of a business park in general, and with buildings. And did you, coming to Denmark, are there any Danish firms doing the same business here around you? Danish developers? Do you work together with them, or is
we have
still? You established yourself as Denmark. I understand.
We have still, of course, some good Danish partners we're working with. For example, our general contractor, that is a Danish company, and some other technical appliances and so on. But we are also driven by German partners and try to bring their competences also in this interregional project.
Okay. Good. So we come to some more questions later. I then welcome Andreas Fuchs from Robert C. Spies KG. And we already learned by your gestures that you know yourself for a longer time and work together. Maybe, Andreas, you can give us some ideas on the business model of Robert C. Spies and your motivation to go over here to Denmark and establish business in Denmark.
Yeah, this is a longer story, but I try to make it very short because we are since 10 years very active in Denmark, especially the last 4 or 5 years. Robert C. Spies is a real estate advisory and brokerage company founded in Bremen, but also located in Hamburg, and since 2 years in Copenhagen. And what's our specialty? We are not investors, we are only advisors, we are independent. So that means we do best as we can for our clients and also municipalities. And we combine especially, let's call it architecture, urban development issues, together with the, let's call it, expectations of the real estate industry. And that means our main focus is cross-border business, bringing German companies, German operators, German project developers, and German investors to Denmark. And Denmark, this is not a secret, a lot of our clients from, especially north of Germany, they are looking into the Scandinavian market as a safe harbor, also driven by the actual political situation. And a lot of our clients, first of all, have Copenhagen in their focus, but we are very happy that we got the mandate 2 or 3 years ago as lead developer and lead broker for the big part of the enhanced park in Maribor, Exit 48, for phase 2, 3, and 4. So in this case, we are lead developer and lead broker, and the intention is to develop a unique new enhanced park or commercial area, and to do best as we can to bring Danish investors, operators, tenants, but also German operators, tenants, and investors to this wonderful place, because we are really 100% convinced that between Hamburg and Copenhagen, after the tunnel is finalized, this will be a great opportunity for business.
Okay. So could you, both of you or one of you, explain something I learned in the pre-discussion that we had, that you're working together already in a network here with all the people around you from wherever nation, Denmark, Germany, or Sweden, or whatsoever. How is the network experience in this area, particularly here, from your perspective? With all the partners that you probably have, that you look at. I mean, we discussed about the network of the Hub 48 involvement in the future.
I start a little bit more coming from our experience over many years working together with people from Denmark, and I can say we got fully support from especially Copenhagen Capacity or the company, company it's called Invest in Denmark. So with a warm welcome, open arms, and high transparency, and so we got fully support because my feeling is we have the same interest to do, not to do a better world, but to bring all these good things together. And I think this is really the opportunity to bring Danish knowledge and all these very interesting things like energy, sustainability, mobility, together maybe with, in some cases, the economically power of Germany, and to combine that.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest strengths of this area is the grounded and the focus on the area focused people and companies here in the place. Whoever we talk to is very open-minded to get information, of course, but also give support in everything needed. And what we cut out of this for us is that we try to give in advance something in forward, and that is what we are at the moment struggling with, preparation of the building permission and so on, because we are now believing that the time has come to start in the next months and in the next period to start with the first building, because all the possible tenants that are looking for the space need something to touch at the end. You can't rent out smaller booths and smaller areas just from the plan. You have to have something, and that is part of our business, to identify all these things who are impossible, believe in the market or even not, and we do strongly believe in this area. And then we try to go on with our partners in place to find companies that are maybe interested then in the rental part.
That's very interesting. We have the German entrepreneurs coming into Lolland and trying to develop the region from this perspective. That's very interesting story, actually. Do you have any recommendations for somebody joining in and thinking about joining in now? Somebody that maybe sits here in the audience and thinks, how things are working here, what is the timing perspective? Because you're early movers, of course, you have to early invest, and maybe it takes a bit longer to really see how future chances develop. What would you be what your recommendations be to anybody thinking of investing here? Especially you're looking at clients for your premises also.
Yeah, of course we do. But we have this discussion several times in the past. All our competitors, the bigger ones from Germany, all the international big companies investing in logistics and real estate for commercial sites, are also in focus with this area, but they say, wait until end of 28, 29, when there is less risk, then we are then we are interested in going into the market, and then we can see that is not the way we do our business. Even in Germany, we look for locations and for areas where, there is a bit more of risk, but this is our chance to go into the market and then hopefully be part of the area. And then later on go on with bigger projects. Of course, we are a company that wants to develop its own business, but with always an eye on the region we are investing to.
Okay, that sounds pretty much like a role model, right? Were there any particular obstacles that you face where you say, okay, we could have done something differently, or maybe in the future do something differently? We were talking about obstacles and pitfalls and chances this morning. Is there any pitfall that you can or any special chance that you can reflect upon?
I was really surprised because as we start, especially with our engagement and work in Maribor, with the commercial area, and we are in the situation to be lead developer. That means to start from master planning into a local plan process. And this was the first time to start a local plan process in Denmark for us. So we are very experienced in Germany with this B plan process, yeah. And I think actually it works very, very well. And we got, and thank you very much, fully support from the municipality with a high engagement. And it seems it's really necessary to have this support, and also, and this is from my side, a recommendation to our clients, please find Danish partners to collaborate, because it doesn't make sense to work from Germany or to do something with the German perspective in Denmark. I think it's necessary to be successful, to have relationship and partners.
To integrate yourself, join
yes,
in.
Yes, and not doing all things by themselves. And that's also the reason why we, in our small company, we are only in the Rødbyhavn Nordics APS 6 people and 3. And my colleague Søren is also today here. He's from Copenhagen, so we have 3 Danish people and 3 from Germany. And this works very well to combine a little bit culture, but feeling and experience. And it's very helpful to have Danish colleagues on both sides, I think so.
How many time do you spend in your office, actually? Do you have an office here in Maribor, or both of you? I mean, the legal side is in Copenhagen as well.
Yeah, we have an office in Copenhagen, a small one. But most of the time I'm here in the place, and then I'm
driving around.
I'm able to use rooms of our friend companies, and that is at the moment a perfect situation. If needed, we can use office space at Business Lolland Falster or FB Suppliers or whatever we need. And in the next step, of course, we are looking for having an own space on the long period.
And for us, it's the same, because we have a lot of projects also in Copenhagen, so it makes sense to have an office in Copenhagen. We are part of the wonderful community of the Blocks Hub to get also inspirations concerning sustainable urban development. And on the working base here in Lolland, it's easy to have Teams meetings or to convincing our team partners traveling to Hamburg. It's also a nice city to have physical meetings there, so it works very well.
If you compare the situation on developing business parks, business areas, to the situation that you know from former experiences here in Denmark to what you experienced earlier, what do you say in comparison to the way Danish authorities or whatever works in comparison?
Regarding the authorities, I can say more after handing in the application, the building application. At the moment, everything works well, but later to the administrational work, maybe you can ask this next year, then can tell a bit more. But what I can say is that what happens now in the place is creating a new commercial area in total, and there is growing so many things, and what we can provide in this is some kind of a playground for other companies to settle their own and grow their own business, and that is what our ambition is. And we do this with always a scope of high sustainability in the buildings. What is more easier to build and to develop in a bigger size than in a smaller size, every company on its own. So we can take advantage of this and give this back to the companies at the end.
Okay. So you look at building a network center for businesses also. But what is the main, before I join into session 2 slowly, but what is the main focus businesses that you look for as clients joining in your facilities? Is there any special sector you're looking at?
Oh, I would not say a special sector. We're very wide open to all kind of customers that is interested in a flexible kind of facility. The halls we build are multi-tenant ready, are always flexible in what you ever want to do inside these buildings. And everyone who's interested in renting out a space between 500 or 8,000 square meters in a whole can come up to us or our broker partners from Sudan here in Maribor and also Robert C. Spies, and then talk about what should happen in this place.
Okay.
I think the challenge is not really the product or construction side. I think the challenge is more to explain people why they should be developer, investor or tenant in Maribor, also in Holland.
Yeah.
Also from the German side, because in the morning we heard a lot about what happened in Munich and Stuttgart. Nobody knows something about the tunnel. And also in Hamburg, not everybody knows about what happens with the tunnel and the opportunities. And this is our challenge to explain our clients and network the story about the tunnel and opportunities. And I think at the end, the master plan concept for the especially Maribor and Herzpark is very wide open based on the regulations of the Kommunalplan, and we can do a lot of things. And I think this is very good, because otherwise, if the frame is too narrow, it's really hard to convincing people under this to be investor or to be part of the game.
So you know that originally it was planned that we had 3 persons on the stage here, and the third person missing is Klaus-Ruhe Matzen, who's a German Schleswig-Holstein Minister of Economy. He just recently had an accident with his bicycle, so that's why he didn't join in today, I'm afraid. But we got a little video message from him, and I would like the guys in charge to start the video session now.
Dear friends in Denmark and Schleswig-Holstein, I would really have loved being with you today at the Fehmarnbelt Days, but it's not possible. I'm very sorry. So this is why I'm on video. Yeah, I would like to discuss with you the possibilities on both sides, because I think that's the important one about our Fehmarnbelt link. It's about coming together. It's about learning from each other. It's about working together. It's about culture and sport and all of those possibilities that we have. And that's the important one for now. It's very important that we work together, that the companies get all of the opportunities and the people living here getting even closer to each other. So I hope that you can use those days to be connected and bring up some ideas that we can work on for the next few years. And I wish you a lot of success and nice days.
Thank you, Mr. Matzen. Afraid he's not being here, but his role model was sitting here. You guys are doing business already in the way that he pronounced it. And thank you very much for joining in this little panel talk today. Maybe you have some talks in detail with persons here in the audience later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you later.
Yep. Thank you.
So, I have to move a bit aside, it's dangerous to leave the stage. So we start the second part of the little session here, and I welcome Morten Dyrholm from Vestas, Lotte Lindehoff from Power to X, Project Development, Mikkel Kie from Forwarding Biofuel, please join the stage, and Lars Ulrich Kahl from Baltic Group. So it's going to be a larger talk this time. Okay, so I was wondering if I was counting wrong, so hi. Have a seat, you can choose the color. Anyway, so we have this infrastructure general talk, just how people come over and develop the area and the way we discussed. And now we're talking about business in the green sector, especially. The potential for growth, that's something that is also in the title of today's session, not only, but in the whole day, actually. Increased collaboration in terms of Green Hub, building a Green Hub in the mega area, making it a brand for the mega area with green technologies, within all the collaboration that also Mr. Matzen talked about, suppliers, markets, logistics, people, of course, and so on. So you're from different businesses within the green industry. And maybe we can just go through your personal view from your business model's perspective on the green hub potential, on the fixed link potential for your particular business, and what the way is that you're going to act in the near future to take your personal stake in these chances. And I'll start with Morten on Vestas, which of course probably everybody in the room knows what your view on the fixed link is, and from your business perspective, your ideas are. So.
Thank you. Maybe just a word on Vestas to those of
Sure.
who are not familiar with the company. Then we are a Danish originated company, around 30,000 employees, and we're the largest wind turbine manufacturer in the world. We have a really, really nice facility in Nakskov, where we have 600 hardworking, fantastic colleagues building wind turbine blades for offshore projects. And so obviously for us, we have a keen interest in getting the fixed link. This will, of course, help our local factories in Denmark, but also the cross-border trade, because obviously a lot of our business activity goes on in the northern Germany that is also known for being a hub for wind energy technology and deployment. So, I mean, we couldn't be happier. This is going to be great for us.
Are you preparing for it in a certain way at present? Is there anything that you think about as company projects from Vestas side that reflect directly to the...
I'm trying to spot opportunities here, because maybe we could get a little emphasis on actually getting more wind projects going in the area. There is a general lack of projects in Denmark and Germany for the moment. It's really been a hard time for the industry. Yeah. So if we can build more connections, not only the tunnel, but also, as we talked about, the hydrogen connections, but also grid infrastructure, and then start zooming in and making Region Zealand and Schleswig-Holstein a superpower in Northern Europe in terms of renewable development, that will also spur much more investment from our side.
I think it is pretty much the same in Germany, to a certain extent.
It is, unfortunately, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we come to some aspects later. Lotte.
Yeah.
Second question to you. Power to X project. Whatever X means, you might explain it. And then
well, yes.
I know what it means, but the development. What is your view on the area?
Well, yeah, but perhaps I should also put some flavor on our company first. I come from European Energy. European Energy is also a Danish originated company, founded in 2004, so we are almost 20 years now.
Okay.
A developer within solar and wind and also Power to X. Right now we have a global pipeline of 35 gigawatt and are present in 29 countries across the globe. And the way we develop projects, that's both in terms of solar, wind and Power to X, is, you could say, from A to Z. From the idea until we enter into operation and also during operation. And one of the main things we look at when we develop projects is infrastructure, because that's really key for our projects and for our projects to succeed. And if I should talk mostly about Power to X, which I work with, we have already 2 projects in Denmark we are constructing, and we are developing projects, also Power to X projects across the globe, but also 2 projects here in Lolland, where we have a project in Nakskov that's quite progressed. And in terms of choosing Lolland as location, that's very much to do with, of course, the municipality. And before I heard also Business Lolland Falster mentioned, that's also a key stakeholder for us. The way that Business Lolland Falster try to make companies in this region work together, map synergies. For instance, our waste products are worth a lot for others and vice versa. And for us also, the Fehmarn link is quite important, because when we look into supply chain, but also offtake, also employees, that's key for our projects to succeed. And we expect that that will be helped greatly, you could say, by the Fehmarn link. Yeah. Okay.
Do you need some wind turbines for those Power to X projects?
Yes, please. Do you have a good price?
No, we're making business already. I like this panel.
Maybe collaboration starts today then, with Denmark. Very good one, yeah. Yeah, moving over to biofuel. Mikkel, Vordingborg Biofuel.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe you can
give
explain your views on
a short introduction. When you have sold your windmills, then we come with the biogen CO2. Then we have a business case.
That's good.
We pretty much cover all the green aspects.
Exactly. I represent Green to X. That's the holding company. And then we have our first project, which is Vordingborg Biofuel, where we are going to produce biofuels and biomethane at the harbor of Port of Vordingborg. And maybe just to start differently, because we are a startup company compared to more established companies on each side of me. But our starting point is actually to look into the biofuel area and the need for biofuels going forward, both the e-fuels but also biofuels. I'll come back to the difference there. And I read a report recently that was quite staggering to me, and I think that will spot on what we're trying to do. So when you look at the world and think about that as 1,000 people, and then you take the 100 most rich people and isolate them, and then you find the most rich person in that group, that person will spend 10 times as much energy as the rest of the rich group. And then you have 900 people that are not even compared here. And to me, that tells me a lot of things. One thing, obviously, that's a problem for our globe. The other thing is that all the things that I know all of you are doing, I'm doing at home, trying to decrease our energy consumption, trying to be more efficient about what we do. It doesn't really matter a lot if we are not trying to get the rest of the world not to use energy going forward. And to me, that tells me that we need to do all these energy efficient things, but a lot of things actually come down to, can we create energy that are green, that can be supplied to the world? And that comes down to what we try to do. We try to scale biofuels, because there are biofuels there already. The question is, can we scale it up to a level where it actually matters? And that's what we do in Vordingborg, where we try to produce biofuels from waste products from typically agriculture. So instead of using today where you use manure for biofuels, obviously, what some of our competitors or colleagues are doing, we try to do it from other green products like straw. So that's the mission we are on from Green to X.
And especially also in the area.
Yeah, the area, I think, is obviously we started before the bridge is here, or the tunnel is here. So in that sense, we can do it in many places. I think I was actually a bit puzzled about how to explain what the Fehmarnbelt will do to us until this morning, where Frederik Reinfeldt, in almost the same sentence, talked about it would fix a problem he has queuing up when he's going on holiday, and in the same sentence talking about world peace. And I actually think that that's spot on. It will give a lot of different things to our company. I'm not sure I could point at one thing that would change our investment decision because of Fehmarnbelt. However, what he talked about is the good relationship with neighbors. And if we can be placed in a region where we have neighbors, more neighbors to come, because it will be an industrial hub, and more relevant neighbors being a green hub, that will be very important to us, because we will be depending on somebody delivering feedstock to us. We will have a byproduct that will be biogen CO2 that a PTX project needs to take from us to create not just biofuels that we produce, but also e-fuels that they will produce. So a lot of these things are synergies between companies, and the more companies within the same area of industry, the more business we will have. And obviously, Fehmarnbelt will contribute a lot to creating that environment. But for our specific company, it's actually something about getting more neighbors and creating good relationship to those neighbors.
And more network. Okay, I understand. So we come to that later. Then I go over to Lars Ulrich Kahl from Baltic Group in Germany. And
in Neustadt and Holstein, in Ostholstein. So one ferry away on the other side of the, as I learned today, Bierdosen link. And We want to try to get the solar panels and solar projects and wind projects through this link to Lolland and Falster and to Denmark. And we are a medium-sized company doing smaller wind turbines. So we are doing bigger PV projects and even PV projects starting with the public and the commercial sector. So Hub 48 would be a fantastic project for a new solar panel project. And even we bring everything together. So we don't only do the PV on the roof, we do the complete project. So we look where is the energy needed and where can we produce the energy and combine it with all needs as a battery, as a supercharger for the e-mobility. So we look the complete line of the company where we are delivering the project. So we look on the needs, and last week we discussed, hey, we are doing solar projects in Aschaffenburg, and one ferry away, we do nothing in Lolland. And I just heard that Professor Schwarz today asking 35 companies who are not interested to come to Denmark. We are really interested because we are one ferry away, and now it's 3/4 of an hour to come here. In future, perhaps 10 minutes. And we are even looking on the employee side. Perhaps one very important point, Lolland is not so high employed as the region around Lübeck, where we are living, and we are always searching for employees. And that's maybe a very interesting point for us. We are doing projects all over Ostholstein, even bigger solar projects, and we are looking for simply people. And we are willing to go here. And
I think that's we're all looking for people.
Yes, so that's our perspective to look, to use that connection, to look over the border. Yes, we want to do business. Everybody here wants to do business. Yep. And we want to do business in Europe. We are doing, at the moment, big wind projects in Poland. We are doing roughly 200 megawatt solar projects, free field in Ostholstein. And we are looking over the belt. It's very interesting for us. And 10 minutes versus 3/4 of an hour makes it possible for employees to come to work to us, to work here and to work on the other side. Because we have, in our region, in Neustadt and Holstein, we have an employment problem, even with technical personnel.
Okay. So if we have this really good competence group regarding green energy here with us, what's your view, or how can we, if we imagine make a little to-do list, what can we do to attract investments in the green industry in the area?
It's kind of
from your perspective.
It's a kind of framework. You will see I'm sitting on the green chair. This was my choice today. And we are looking on the framework of energy. We are the executables. We have to do the jobs. We make really the panel on the roof. We are doing the wind energy turbine in the ground. We do it. Looking on Denmark, we are looking on the discussion regarding net fees. Denmark is discussing now for 1 year, will there be a net fee coming up for renewable energies or not? And from the investment side, everybody is now very careful to go to Denmark because this discussion is not closed. We start to do PPAs with our customers because grid parity is there. So everybody starts to sell energy directly. Yeah, the time of European EEG is over. We are always in virtual PPA or practical PPA, balanced circles of energy. That's where we're thinking about. But we need, as the executables, we need framework. Okay. And that is what we expect from the political part. We need clear frameworks. And
you mean regulatory frameworks?
Regulatory frameworks. To get clear circles where we can act and not changing next day again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, regulatory is a national sort of thing, and so we have this German
European thing,
Danish regulation, and there's some EU stuff. Okay.
No, it's actually a regional challenge in most parts. I mean, the majority of the reasons why renewable development in Denmark has stalled and why it's so slow in Germany is actually local, municipal, regional decision making.
Yeah, okay.
And there is the power in this region if we want to be a green hub in this area, to look at permitting, for example. It can take in Germany as long time to get permits for a renewable or wind project as it takes to build the tunnel.
Really long.
I mean, honestly, it's not even an exaggeration. This is how it is.
Yeah.
And so Schleswig-Holstein, together with Lolland and the greater region here, they could be front runners and say, we want to create a green hub to attract investments, meaning we want to have renewable projects. So let's look at permitting and say, why should it take 7 years? Why not 1 year?
Yeah.
It's just a slight, suggestion.
So is that something that you discussed?
I actually fully agree, but I think what we can do here is to actually be ambitious and actually think about what can be done, and then together put a pressure on the regulators, you could say, because in my opinion, what could be done here to improve it even more would be, as you mentioned, talk about hydrogen infrastructure, also CO2 infrastructure. In my opinion, at least from a Power-to-X perspective, one of the key elements in the green transition is to actually also establish markets for biogenic CO2, markets for e-fuels, biofuels, and the regulators could, in my opinion, do a lot about the framework, and then if the framework is in place, then the market would definitely come up with solutions. But for instance, talking about biogenic CO2, right now it's a waste product in an EU directive, so you cannot trade it across borders unless you have a bilateral agreement. That needs to be changed in order to utilize the new infrastructure, for instance. So there's a lot to be done by the regulators, but it's up to us to actually point out what is needed and put pressure on them. And that's also in terms of infrastructure for grid and for power. It's infrastructure in all aspects, I would say. Yeah.
It must be able to sell energy from Denmark to, let's say, Poland and back. We need an intergrid between the states and the saleability of energy through this big grid then. We have to think European, and that's a very important point. And then we can act in that way.
Yeah, because the climate crisis doesn't know borders. So why do we act according to borders? For instance, when we talk about CO2 reductions, you talk about national CO2 reductions. That's, to me, stupid. Because this is a problem that needs to be solved across borders, and then the infrastructure is first step ahead, but we also need to think across borders in terms of regulatory affairs, for instance. That's the only way to solve the climate crisis.
Is that something that in your green industry, you have your relationship and business organizations that you promote on a constant basis to decision makers?
Yes, and we hope to get you on board as well.
Yeah.
So you start pushing the right message.
Okay.
And just to maybe add to that, I obviously agree. I think number 1 and 2 on the list is probably something about the regulatory regimes and about the infrastructure being there. I think number 3 on my list is probably where the local politicians and business support organizations can do even more, because obviously some of these things are cross-border and difficult to address from Lolland. However, what we've seen in Vordingborg, for example, they have built facilities down there to actually attract investments, building out the harbor to make it bigger, and also had a very proactive view on we want green energy. If we should make it interesting for them, we understand that they need each other. So in the end, we ended up having a place where there's a PTX project next to us. That was not something we came with or they came with. The municipality of Vordingborg actually reached out and found out how to use the synergies there. We have a waste product that can be used for biofertilizer, and our neighbor is a fertilizer producer. That's not a coincidence either. So from a political side, even on a local basis, you can actually do a lot to make it more attractive to companies within the green sector, and not just wait for the infrastructure to be there or the high-level regulation, because even in the regulatory regime right now, it's actually a good business model, but it wouldn't have been if it wasn't because we had good neighbors. Then we would have been needing a CO2 grid that I still hope will come, but until then, we actually have a solution that was created locally. So I think being bold on how you build business areas locally and think synergies, so we as businesses can tap into those synergies. That's something you can do from a local point of view.
Okay.
Not neglecting the other things.
Yeah, that's true.
And I have 3 or 4 questions from your working groups here with me that were reaching out earlier. And one of this is related to wind industry and offshore wind. How do we coordinate offshore wind in the mega region? How better coordinate? I mean, I learned some weeks ago in the press that there's been some coordination in the North Sea regarding offshore stuff, even with the UK, as far as I remember. Is there any idea on this region, our mega region, regarding offshore potential?
I mean, the North Sea area is a pretty good example. I mean, it's 9 countries now that have joined hands to develop 300 gigawatts of offshore in the North Sea, linking in both the time horizon, so all the 300 gigawatts are not being installed in one go, but in zones, and linking in grid and other infrastructure needs like ports, etc., for the whole region. Now, of course, we need to see an action plan for that, but hopefully that's in the making. The same could be applied in the Baltic. I know there has already been some discussions in that area, but I think it's a good model to try and work out from. We have Energiø Bornholm as a starting point, could be 3 to 4 gigawatts of development, and we'll have stronger grid links connecting also this area. Yeah. So there is actually an opportunity now to go in and map it out and say we want to have, let's say, 20 or 30 gigawatts, and then I guarantee you the factories will start popping up in this area.
Any additions from your side?
I actually just agree. But there needs to be a plan that also involves, you could say, the countries affected by it, because then that's the basis to get, you could say, full support for all countries. So yeah, I think that needs to be in place. Yeah.
And I pick up one on my own, which was not developed by the group. I talked within a smaller group earlier this day about hydrogen. And somebody came up and said, oh, Germany is pretty good in hydrogen, actually. I don't know who said that. But recently I joined a panel discussion on hydrogen in Schleswig-Holstein as well. What's your view on potential for hydrogen with in our mega area here?
That must be
especially
well, I could say that
the Danish perspective might be a bit different from the German perspective. So, what's your ideas on hydrogen?
Should I?
Green hydrogen. We are always coming back to regulatory on the state side, and we are coming to grid, and then we are coming to makeability. If I would have a truck and want to come from Denmark to Austria, then I need to refill that truck. So we are discussing about infrastructure, hydrogen infrastructure, availability of the trucks, even at a comparable price. If we say, yes, we are looking for sustainability, for green energy. I follow this Power to X now for 20 years. Hydrogen is a big thing since 20 years, but what have we realized now at the end? We see company BMW announcing the BMW 5 20 years ago with a hydrogen energy. No infrastructure. People will use this if infrastructure is there. So we have to start with infrastructure, even first on that side of truck side, because the electricity works perhaps on that small mobility side, but the trucks, if I put a 200 kilowatt battery in a truck, he is usable for 200 kilometers. So we need to have the infrastructure link. And the best thing is to put that infrastructure besides the motorways, because that's mobility. So we are always talking about grids and framework. And if we discuss in it internally regarding we want to have everything green, we need to have the framework for taxes. If I buy 1 liter of diesel today, I pay roughly 50 cents on tax in every land, if I'm in Denmark, in
Every
Sweden,
region,
or
yeah.
well. So that is where I can steer that mobility. But don't get the start of that mobility if I don't invest in infrastructure. And this infrastructure thing is a thing I think we have to put to the governments, to the European government even, because we need to think in European grids for the energy and European energy to the European grids to H2. Yes, that's the thing we have to manage. Yes, we as a company we can help. We can build up regional infrastructure, but there has to be a plan.
The way we approach hydrogen, we actually have a lot of potential hydrogen projects in Denmark, but in Denmark there's very few who actually use hydrogen for anything. So right now those projects are on hold because it's too expensive to transport hydrogen by truck. So as it is now, hydrogen needs to be produced where it's used. But on the other hand, it's Denmark who has a lot of green energy. So we had really the basis to produce hydrogen that are RED II compliant. And we very much await the hydrogen backbone in Jutland down to Germany, because we expect Germany to be a huge market for green hydrogen. And we would also look into hydrogen projects in Germany. The solar and wind parks in Germany are smaller, so it would be smaller parks. But when the hydrogen pipe is in place, we could definitely produce a lot of green hydrogen in Denmark and send it to Germany. And also, if a hydrogen pipe were established from Lolland to Germany, for instance, that could also be a really smart way to transport the hydrogen. And there's a huge potential to produce a lot of hydrogen in Lolland because there's a surplus of green energy. So, but we need at least for hydrogen, we really need the pipe. For all other access, it's easier to transport. Yeah.
So probably biofuel has nothing to add to hydrogen?
No, we don't have any hydrogen on the shelf, so nothing to add there.
Okay, but from a wind perspective, I mean, this offshore electrolyzer stuff is something that you look at?
Yeah, I mean, the way we approach hydrogen is that now Lolland is a special case. As you say, we have surplus energy here, so it really makes sense to start using some of that for hydrogen production. But in a general sense, we're still a long way from actually greening up the electricity grid. And if you just build hydrogen projects and then take away the green electrons from the grid and then move it into molecules instead, then we are no better off. So I'm back to my starting point. Okay. To go to the green hydrogen revolution, we need many more projects of renewable, on both sides of the border to actually realize it.
Okay. So we learned it's a lot about regulation and infrastructure, basically. Yeah. I mean, we're here to talk about infrastructure. But I take another card from your working groups and raise another question that I think Lars Ulrich already mentioned in a way. How do you plan to attract future HR working capabilities and people for your firms in the region in future? Or what's your plans, your views on the region in terms of resources, human resources? Yeah.
Well, from our perspective, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are looking into right now 2 projects in London, and we would need at least 50 employees for each plant during operation, and of course even more during construction. We hope to get a lot of employees from the local area, but last week I participated in another conference where I learned that it's estimated that the green transition in Denmark alone would require 45,000 more employees, and a lot of those employees would require special skills. So I think, in my opinion, it actually needed to be an EU question. How do we educate the people we need for the green transition? And how we need the education and we need the logistics around it. I hope for Lolland that we will be able to get the resources we need in Lolland and perhaps also from the northern parts of Germany. But in the long run, if Denmark, the green transition requires 45,000 employees, think about what it will require in the entire Europe, in the entire world. So this is something that also needs to be thought about across borders, in my opinion, to solve that demand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think if I can add, we've had the discussions in the Vordingborg area, also covering this area, obviously. And I think it can be divided into two. There's some very special skills that is needed, engineering skills, etc. And I think that is a discussion point both on EU level, but also on a national level. The question is then, will they live where the plant is, or will they have a travel time where you could have definitely some advantages in having a better infrastructure, including being able to get specialists from Germany up easier to the plants. Then a lot of the people working on a plant like ours, that will be less specialized, but still they need to have an understanding of the energy systems, etc. I must say, I've been positively surprised by the interest from technical schools, etc., in the areas, trying to understand what is it exactly the competences you need. We've had visits both from the minister responsible for it, but also from different schools in the areas to just understand what do we need to see if they can make do a training with their students for them to be prepared for a job with us, even in the future. And I think there you can do a lot of locally again to actually enable staffing a plant locally.
Okay. That's a good point.
We are sourcing globally, and we have a lot of experience now with the so-called Fachkräfteeinwanderungsgesetz, what comes up to Germany. We learned for 2 engineers what we took out of the European area to Germany. It took us 7 months to Europeanize these engineers to come to Neustadt and Holstein. We could have more employees from external, but the paperwork and the time frame is horrible.
Regulation again, right?
We are always in the same window. We know our needs and we have to act in our needs. We can do things, but we need not even regulations, we need speed. If we come today as a foreign employee, we have an employment contract with one guy since September last year. It's a guy from Iraq, made there his master and is an electrical engineer. Came to us, we made some Teams meetings, several Teams meetings, and so on. He goes to German embassy in Baghdad in end of September. We have still no agreement that he can come here. Everything takes long and it's very complicated. You have to go to the embassies and go to the Chamber of Commerce, get your stamp, get back to the embassy, and so on. And if you make it not in the capital town of the land where you are coming from, then you have to first go to a consul. He sends his paperwork to the embassy. That embassy sends it to Germany. The process we are discussing of a digitalized world, of digitalization, we want to be fast. Today we can send money from here to the other side in seconds. And we are using for governmental processes internal in the European Union months.
But differently from country to country. I think Denmark is a bit more progressive in terms of...
Other thing, discussing, let's stay in frameworks, not even in employment. We start in VAT. We make a project, bring a wind turbine to Poland, and getting the blades from Poland to the place and everything other from Germany. How long do you think it takes that I get my wet from Poland back to Germany? That is an act of 6 months, and the same happens here in Denmark. We don't act as a union. Everything takes too long. For us as executable. If you are working in the government, you would say everything has its order and its place and has to be checked. But in realization, if I want to have an engineer coming back to the base from anywhere and say, hey, here's a working contract, I won't wait 6 months until I can work there and get my money. How do I feed my family for 6 months, yes? So that is something we have to think over, and
very basic issue.
Speed is necessary.
Yeah. So what's Vestas' policy on HR?
No, but I think the tunnel is coming in a very good timing. If you look at the totality of the large offshore projects that is on the table right now in this area, a lot of that will start materialize as 2030 and beyond. And let's say that just 70 or 80% of the policymakers' ambitions for the area gets realized. We're talking tens of thousands of people that needs to be employed here. And so it will take a regional approach. We will need Danes and Swedes and Poles and Germans attracted to the same cause and building up this enormous amount of offshore projects in this area. So it's going to be extremely exciting. But of course, to get there, we need a common approach to things.
Okay. Yeah. Coming to an end, if each one of you would have one wish to anybody regarding the development, and especially the green hub development of the mega region, what I assume I heard some of the wishes already, but what would it be?
1 year permitting time for renewable projects.
Okay. Good one.
Easy fix.
If they get it, I want as well. No, I think in general, good infrastructure, not just on gas, on hydrogen, on CO2, but in general, everything. The more smooth the infrastructure, the better.
Okay.
Well, it's a bit boring, but I would say the same. But I would also say my main focus at the moment is biogenic CO2 and infrastructure for that. And in the video, I noticed that there's actually a transporting line going Norway, Sweden, Denmark, down to Germany, and that's exactly where I dream about an infrastructure for biogenic CO2, because that's the market we want to include in such. Yeah. So that's, if I should prioritize anything, that would be the first one to go to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So don't talk, let's do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we're done with the group. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And there's a lot to do, and I think we took some notes, and also our business organizations, to push the issues that you just all mentioned, which is fairly not that easy, but we try our best. Thank you very much. And now we think we have.
But I guess I will start by introducing our panel, and also say a few words what we'll discuss. It's a call to action for a connected mega region for a clean green economy. So you could say it's a grand finale of our sort of conference, or as I alluded to at the beginning, a little less conversation, a little more action. It's the Elvis panel. You could also say that it is the Ronald Reagan panel, because I started out saying that this is a day where Ronald Reagan held his famous address, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. We're not appealing to Mr. Gorbachev here, but to various politicians and the citizens as such. You could also call it the public actors panel, because we have politicians from 4 countries of our mega region. And we also have Thomas Becker, the managing director of String, but I guess you are a little bit of everything. And you're also the spider in the co-web. But let's just introduce our panel. Werner Schwarz, our comeback kid from the first session, with a long title, so I have to read now. Minister of Agriculture, Rural Areas, European Affairs and Consumer Protection in Schleswig-Holstein. Woo! I'm a bit worried about your business card, but I guess you can find some kind of acronym also in Germany. Then we have Michael Nielsen. This is a bit easier, member of the Regional Council of Region South, also Region Syddanmark, and that's easy on a business card, I presume. Then we have Siv Henriette Jacobsen, and here we go up to Norway, because you are the majority leader at Østfold Folkeskommune and chairwoman of the county cabinet of Viken. Hopefully, otherwise you'll correct me afterwards. And then we have from Region Zealand, Lars Lindskov. Yes, that was correct. And Linda Snecker, member of Riksdagen for the Left Party. Så det må være Venstrepartiet. And you are also member of the Parliamentary Committee of Transport and Communication. So that sounds very relevant for this particular session. We have a number of questions that you have basically come up with in the workshops. But just to make sure that we actually answer the task that we've been given, a call to action, let's just do a snappy round, and I mean snappy, so I don't want any long speech about whatever. Now you're going to answer in a very snappy way. In order for this mega region to see the light of day, what will you do once you come back from Rødbyhavn? Werner Schwarz, so what will you do yourself now that you've listened to all this? You must have had some kind of aha moment where you say, this is what I'll do.
When we start this World Cafe this afternoon, or the lunch, once again, when we start this World Cafe at lunchtime, it was very interesting how much we need people to support the future region here. And I will go on to these we identified in our group. It's to bring people together, and we have the string region. We have already an organization, and we see Thomas Becker here. He's the man of string region, and I guess we can do a lot to bring people together and start this, the future of the region.
So when you go home, you will call Thomas?
No.
Okay, so what will you do? Don't ever call Thomas again.
I will work to bring people from the metropolitan region of Hamburg to think about coming together with the metropolitan region of Copenhagen. I think that's it, to focus more on a bigger region than just Fehmarn and Rødbyhavn. So that's the thing I will do for the future.
And that was also one of the important points that were made in the first panel discussion by Carsten Schulz, because he said, don't forget sort of the neighboring region, make sure you also focus upon those. So that was very concrete. Now, Mikael, what will you do?
Well, I have the advantage of being a little expert in this because my region is already bordering with Germany. So we are actually used to this cooperation and collaboration, and we have like very close collaboration around a lot of different issues. It could be, of course, the climate changes that we're going through, and it could be digitalization, also education and cultural understanding. And I think that's one of the ground issues here that I think the region of Sjælland, and Lars, perhaps I should call you tomorrow to help you how we understand each other. Because the cultural understanding is actually quite important for the rest of the bricks of the puzzle to fall in place.
So you will basically work on being, use system export, sort of to make sure that your lessons learned, that they can basically be used in this particular context.
Yeah, but we've worked together in many years across the border. We have a lot of people commuting over the border each day. We have a lot of things working together. But of course, we've also made some things that we should learn from, and some things where we have been, you could say, not level with each other around how we progress things.
Yeah. So don't repeat the mistakes that have already been made.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good things here. We have almost the same thinking, but still we have some different ways of approaching things. That's what I mean with the cultural understanding and how we do things. So there, I think there's a lesson to learn.
See, what will you do once you get back to Norway?
In Norway, this is missionary work. Because very few people have heard about this project and nobody has related to it. So right now our job is to tell, hello, this has started, it's going to be real, and it will be real just in 7 years. So now you are at the crossroad, and now you have the time to decide whether this should be an opportunity or a problem. Because if we don't do anything about it, it will be a problem, because we will move the blood clot from the heart of Europe further north.
That is a metaphor that I'll remember. You can rest assured about that. Thomas,
yeah.
I'm not sure that I dare to give you the floor, but remember, it's one thing that you are able sort of to point to now, which you'll do once you get home from Rødbyhavn. So the most important thing.
There's one thing I want to do, and there's one thing I do not want to do anymore. I'll start with the latter. I will never believe that the national state can solve cross-border matters, barriers. That I will never believe anymore. What I will do as soon as I come home is to collect and get together the partners in string and to discuss how do we establish a hydrogen pipe from this part of Scandinavia to Germany.
Yeah.
Because that's what I heard the industry crying for. And right now we are only discussing Jutland. We should, of course, discuss this side as well.
Very disciplined.
Thank you.
More than welcome. Linda, what do you say? What will you do once you get home?
When I get home to the parliament, Riksdagen in Sweden, by tomorrow, I will stress the fact that Sweden will be a bottleneck when the Fehmarnbelt is ready, because we will have a lot of goods and passengers want to travel by railway, I hope, because that's the green future, and they will come to the bridge, and then it's stopped. And if it stops in Sweden, it also stops in Norway. And therefore, Sweden, we don't have a new main rail core. We have one that is very old, that the government just want to maintain. They don't want to build anything new. And it means that Sweden will be a bottleneck. And both Sweden and Norway will be the small neighbors in the north. And I think that Denmark and Germany will come closer to the continent, and we will be so far away. And therefore, Sweden needs new core railway. And we need it now. And the government had just stopped a project that has been planned for 10, 15 years. And, well, it's not good for the green steel development.
And they stopped it because of money, or?
I would say it stopped because of political conflicts, about not believing that either the industry or passengers want to travel by railway. And right now I'm really worried about the green steel development in the north of Sweden, because that is the green, clean economy. But it can't stay in Sweden. It has to travel all the way from Kiruna to Denmark through Fehmarnbelt. And it's 80% of the iron ore that is produced in the north of Sweden. And you want that. We want it down in Europe. And Sweden will be a bottleneck. And that is not a good green development.
So that's a very clear message. You go back home and be the ambassador also of this project, but in particular also warn about the fact if we don't do anything in Sweden and Norway, you will definitely become the bottleneck, and you should not do that. So infrastructure will be extremely important for you. Lars, what do you say? What will you do after this?
I'll call the chairman of the teachers union and ask the teachers in Denmark to learn the children to learn the languages of Swedish, Norwegian, and German again.
Woo! Oh. And what will they say when you phone them up?
No, I mean, in a bigger perspective, I was born in the 60s, and I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s, and I saw the tearing down of the wall in Berlin, as you started this sentence with. There's an old saying that soldiers don't walk on merchants' roads. And when we are getting together in a peace project like the European Union, and we are going together as long as far as the Kalmar Union, we have been seeing prosperity when we work together, and we have seen a decline when we are fighting against each other. And infrastructure is one of the key issues to building nations together and bringing people together. It's a little bit of a paradox that we are sitting here from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Germany, speaking a language of people who wants to leave the European community. So I think that the teachers' union should be the first one to call, and they can call the Minister of Education and start the process of that. Perhaps we shouldn't be able to talk each other's languages, but we sure hell should be able to understand what we're saying when we're talking our native language.
Well, I completely...
I can speak a lot about infrastructure and the green...
but we'll get back to that.
But let's talk with the language.
Yeah, and you fulfilled your task because
Yes.
you were only allowed to point to one sort of a message that you want to bring home. I usually say, and Thomas has heard this before, mit Englisch kommt man durch, mit Deutsch kommt man weiter. So that is only one way of putting it, but you can just use that with Sweden and Norway as well. And personally, I also think it's very strange when at the moment, almost in the Nordic Council, you speak English, yeah.
With Danish, you come nowhere.
No, yeah, okay. It may be a bit problematic when you phone up your various colleagues there, and also the Minister of Education. She may not be particularly pleased, or he may not be particularly pleased about that. I was just wondering, when I interviewed Frederik Reinfeldt, he laughed when I referred to the fact that the region up north Copenhagen and the Øresund, that it took quite some time to agree upon the name Greater Copenhagen. Obviously, that's a bit difficult when you come from Stockholm to agree to. I was just wondering, as I mentioned, the Fehmarnbelt, when there was this sort of competition made in, about 10 years ago, what do you call the Fehmarnbelt connection? It was Dosenbierverbindung, but that was number 2. Number 1 was actually der Untergang, but as you can imagine, that was completely not politically correct. So let's stick. That's good. So let's stick to Dosenbierverbindung, but that's not my point. My point is, what do we actually call this region? This region that is emerging. Do we have a name? What is the baby called? What do you think that the baby should be called? Because I guess you should, if you want to brand something, it's a green hop or whatever, you need to say, well, you should come to the region. Yeah? Thomas?
We have been discussing Greater Fehmarnbelt.
Region Fehmarnbelt?
Greater Fehmarnbelt, because...
Greater Fehmarnbelt?
Of course, it is a copying of...
GFB? No?
It is a copying of Greater Copenhagen, but it does also illustrate that what has been said, it is very important that this new tunnel does not develop to become a Calais-Dover connection, where basically very, very little is happening on both sides between the two capitals. And that is a danger. And if I may, Madam Chair, I think that is one of the very important messages coming from the business side, namely that stop saying that it is the national authorities, stop saying that it is the business side who take the decision. It is actually you, the regional and municipal partners, who have to start doing it, because it will not come from the national governments.
See, we are still on the contest here of what should the baby be called, yeah?
I think we have to have a sort of decide where the name should be used.
Yeah.
Because we have a corporation that we call String, and we have been using the String region, and that's very internal.
Yeah.
And I think also Fehmarnbelt could be very internal. Only people who know about Fehmarnbelt know about Fehmarnbelt. But if you go to Singapore, if you go to Beijing, you should have a name that they know where it is when they want to invest in this region. So maybe Northern Europe, or even Skanger, Scandinavia, Germany.
Oh, yeah, okay, interesting one.
I think it's bigger than just having the belt. I would say Western Baltic area or Western Baltic future area or something like that. I guess it signs up the string region, but for the Baltic, it's a name that's known. So we should take the Baltic into it, and Western Baltic is better than saying all the Baltic. That's too far east, and maybe in future time we have all the Baltic Sea, but at the moment I would prefer Western Baltic.
So, Siv, I just want to make sure, what was your suggestion actually? Was it?
Scanger.
Scanger, yeah, okay, it's Scandinavian and German.
I just came up right now, actually.
Mikael?
Yeah, well, I think the name is actually quite important, you know, because it has to include a lot of things, and also to make sure that you feel ownership towards this. And if you just call it something with Fehmarn, then it's very easy for others just to say, no, it's really nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And I think that if you, for example, call it North Europe Green Hub Mega Region or something like that, they know that we are in top of the green how you say, transition. That, I think, is well known over the whole world. And the Fehmarnbelt connection is just one part of the big plan that we have. This is just one part of what we have to do to be honest and true to each other about being a green hub, and about being the ones that actually can change this development that we are in.
So you're focused on the content, what happens here, basically, the
Yes.
green. Linda and Lars, do we have any suggestions? We
I
don't have
pass
to?
on that one.
Yeah?
Yes.
Greater Denmark.
Greater Denmark! Woohoo!
Or maybe I will
I'll
say-
write that down.
Mal bis
Okay.
Altona.
So now we have Greater Denmark.
Once upon a time it goes to Altona.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to do a contest where you could basically say which one you support, but it's a bit dark in here, so I'm not sure I'll be able sort of to count in the right way. And then I'm sure Thomas would do like this, so that we have VAR to make sure that his sort of proposal wins. But you wanted to have the floor.
Yeah.
Second
proposal.
Ah.
Green Northern Europe.
Green Northern Europe.
No, green Northern Europe.
Ah, okay.
That could maybe content everything that we have been discussing here. But it's not that crispy, but it is, let's say, it does embrace everything, I think.
Yeah, let's try to be honest. What Sif says is actually, I think, a really important issue. That Norway right now has really no interest in what's happening right here, right now, because they don't know about it. And and then here we can again use the name to include, and not to put it aside and say that's not in our neighborhood, but it is in all of our neighborhoods, also in the neighborhood of Sweden. That's why I think the name is actually more important than we are just saying or thinking right now.
Yeah, that's why I ask. And you can also say that Shakespeare once said, "What's in a name?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also too important for a bunch of politicians to pull something on the top of their head. There should be done real good professional work with a name that resonates all over the world.
And who does that work? Forgive my ignorance. Who would be the actors here? Who would come up with such a...
We can do it.
Yeah, let's Thomas do that.
So it's you. Who will be... Will there be some kind of committee or whatever?
It's not me, it's our members.
Okay.
And that comprises most of...
Since you do not sort of believe apparently in nation state, you will not leave it to the government, so you will basically put yourself at the front of this particular endeavor. Okay, good to know. Okay, now we should definitely remember the various questions that we got from the various workshops. The first one is extremely easy, now that we don't really have a name for this region yet. So, Minister, how can you inspire all Germans for the project?
I guess we can do with the future energy supply. I guess we have the wind, we have the water, we have some space within our area, and we can supply. You heard about the last panel. We can provide energy, as it like electricity grids or produce hydrogen. I guess that's one of the main prospects for this area? Despite we have the some kind of good exchange, handel. What's the name for handel?
Trade.
The trade is still coming up. We heard that Sweden has a lot of goods coming down, so trade is still a very important thing. But for the future, I guess it's energy, and that's why I can, especially the German South, they're suffering of low energy, and they really interested. The problem is to bring it down. Maybe to Milan, we will bring hydrogen. So we cross along Munich and give them some hydrogen as well.
So this is definitely something you can also feel here in this tent. I mean, wind is out there. And I was actually once on a fact-finding mission in Bavaria to look for wind turbines. I saw one. It was outside Allianz Arena, and I presume it was just, a marketing ploy of Allianz, or maybe my favorite football club, Bayern Munich. But this was then a very sort of utilitarian sort of point that we should tell the Germans what they get out of it.
Yes.
So it's energy, it's wind. So you're not appealing to emotions, culture. That's not going to work in order to persuade the Germans.
In Germany, we are at the moment really in a discussion how to produce green energy. And I guess at the moment it's the real main topic.
Yeah.
And so I guess it gets into emotion when we are talking about that, because heating in winter or whatever. And no Russian gas anymore. So I guess there's a lot of emotion in energy at the moment, and to have a region for tourism, it's okay. But the discussion in Germany and the public discussion is a difference at the moment. So I guess it's good to get out of it. And maybe they come here and have a look at the turbines and see what they are in the Sealand region.
And now you are in the very sort of good position where you can get a little bit of help from your friends up here in the panel. So who would like to help the minister in order to really solve this overall challenge of how you can inspire all Germans for the project? Any other arguments than the one was mentioned here, which I personally thought was a very good one, an energy provider for the region, yes?
Well, I think even though I'm a local politician in a regional council and also actually in a local commune, I think the politicians need to step up and take some responsibility here. And now we've had a lot of risk-willing companies trying a lot of different things here in this green transition. And now we need to pinpoint which one are we going with, which one are we ready to let people invest in, so we don't have like a full palette of different things, but now we need to narrow it down. Then I think actually the investments will come and people will be willing to say now we go. Because right now it's still like a little too unsure, and we don't have all money in the world to do this, so we can't really, I think we can't just accept that we put like the butter, thinly on the bread. We have now to really be a little more, focused on the things that we choose. And we need to it needs to be a political choice when it comes to it. And there we need to step up.
And any other help here? Yes, Siv has.
Yeah, there's a lot of heat in energy. But I said there's a lot of heat in energy.
Yeah, okay, yeah. In many ways, yeah.
But I think the overriding issue for all of us everywhere is that this is a huge, huge investment. At least 90 billion euros, at least. So the overriding issue should be how does Europe and the countries and the people get the most out of this investment? And one way of doing it is making the whole corridor from Palermo to Kiruna work for trade, for commerce, for people, so that this project right here will be a benefit for all along the corridor.
So it is actually, I mean, making sure that people understand that this is not just about this region, this is about the map of Europe as such. So then it is actually greater Europe that we are constructing here. Yes, Linda?
And I don't know if the most important thing, sorry for not being expert on this region, I live in the east of Sweden, it's quite far away, but my railway goes to Copenhagen, or it's supposed to go to Copenhagen. They never have the right train that can go across the bridge. But I don't know if the most important thing is people knowing about the tunnel or actually people using the tunnel. If we want a green transition, if we want the goods traveling, we can't pick them up on the electrical big trucks that doesn't really exist yet, because the loading station are not built yet, but we do have something that's already electric, most of it, and it's the railway. And we want the goods to go by there. We wanted to go to Palermo, and we wanted to go to Kiruna, and that will not happen if we don't invest in the infrastructure, not only the tunnel, but also in the rest of, like I said before, in Sweden, but also through Denmark and Germany. And we are talking about it in Sweden, but no one is putting money into it. We are maintaining a railway that doesn't exist.
Excellent. I'm not sure that was that helpful, Peter, but it was more realistic, pragmatic, and realpolitik here. Lars, do you have any help for your friend?
Well, I think that it's an onion with many layers, because with infrastructure, with transportation, it's like water. It always finds the easiest way.
Yes.
So when the heavy transport from Hamburg and the rest of Germany finds out how easy it is to get to Stockholm or Oslo or whatever, it'll go through the tunnel. And when the goods go through the tunnel, there'll be a lot of logistics companies, there'll be a lot of services around those companies. So a lot of companies will change countries and regions in the next 20, 30 years. And when companies change locations, money changes locations, and a lot of service providers will follow that. So I totally agree with Linda that infrastructure is the key provider for growth and prosperity. And as a German, the Germans will know, driving Mercedes and Audi and running on Continental tires and all the fancy and premium, that where there's quality, there's always Germans. So just follow the trucks to the northern region, and prosperity will go back to Germany as well, because when we're trading with each other, financial will grow, and prosperity will grow, and employment will grow. So I think it's quite easy. The other issue that you mentioned before, Minister, was that the pleasure side, the tourism, because the first one is a necessity, the other one is pleasure. And when people try to go to business travels, they will take their family with them the next time when they've seen fantastic places like Hayes Badehotel down here, or other places. We see the same thing when we go to some conference in Hanover or wherever, and we find some small villages, and we say we'll have to go through there next time we go on vacation. So that's the peace project that I mentioned before. That when we know where the habits, the foods, and the nature, and all the things that we see on our way, it starts with the trucks, and then the rest will follow.
So it's a snowballing effect. Yes,
Yes.
Sue, and then Thomas?
Yes, but it's very important to underline that transportation and infrastructure is never a goal in itself.
No.
And to make the most out of this investment, we also have to build a community. We have to build business relationship, we have to build a relationship between the universities, the culture, and in that way, when we build a community, we will also build a region in people's head, and that's also very important.
Thomas, the final word in this
Yeah,
round?
I just wanted to come back to the very wise words from Minister Schwartz. Right now in Europe, on the top of the political agenda is energy. It's both energy security and it's green energy. It's less carbon-intensive energy. And that is number one and will be number one political priority for many years. So this region, and I would like to include Schleswig-Holstein in this narrative, because you do have a lot of shallow waters, you do have a lot of wind manufacturers, you do have a lot of industry in that, and you also have the interest of hydrogen, as well as the rest of the existing string region. Together, we are in a fantastic situation when it concerns the delivery of this number one priority if we organize it well. And to me, it is in that sense that the infrastructure becomes relevant. So first thing first, why are we doing it? It's because somebody said that we had a very visionary foreign minister in the 60s who people thought were drunk when he was negotiating with the Norwegians about the North Sea. In fact, he was a visionary. He gave you all the deep water and gave us all the shallow waters, and to the Germans. And today, the shallow waters is the gold. That's where the wind turbines can be established. Really, I think that is the very, very important picture to keep in our heads. And if it goes the way the IEA in Paris is predicting, this area, together with most of Norway, big parts of Sweden, northern Germany and Denmark will be, Fatih Birol said, the new Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure I like that, but I think he meant it in an economic sense. We will be a growth area. There will be an enormous growth here. Now, we then have to listen to what the business panel just told us here before. It's going too slowly. That's the challenge. Yeah. That's the barrier. Yeah.
But I don't think you will win my sort of competition of what this region should be called by saying Saudi Arabian region. I think you're out.
No, don't say that.
Yeah, if you're out, if you say that. Okay, so we take the next question. How can we reduce the language barrier between the Danish region not using English, both for the future labor market and for the existing labor market? So that was basically up your alley, right? But how would you do it in practice? You said you would phone the various, who would you actually phone? You said the minister and you said the language organizations, why not? But how would you do this in practice, Lars?
If I knew that, I would probably be quite wealthy. I don't know, but it's been, when I went to high school, I had German and French, Latin, in fact, and Danish. German, French, English, Latin, and Danish. 5 languages when I was in high school. I don't even know if they have German today. I could see some potential in some years about learning Spanish instead of French or whatever, seeing in a global perspective. But I think it's a problem that we have such narrow-minded public schools today, primary schools, that we don't even learn the basic languages in the major export markets around us. When I grew up in Denmark in the 60s, we had a monopoly of Danish radio and television. We could see only one channel. The most exotic was looking at Svensk Television 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And it was, John Wayne in Swedish.
Yeah. Or Björn Borg in Swedish, yeah.
Michael perhaps grew up with German television, but it was prohibited in Denmark by
Sesamstraße.
Yeah. By putting up a satellite dish. But today, when we have 40 channels on our cable network, we don't see French or Norwegian or whatever. We see a lot of American crap or Barnaby on Friday evening. So we have been Anglified in every way. So we need to go back to our primary school system and learn the languages in our neighbor countries. They are in every statistics, we trade with Sweden, Norway, Germany, and Great Britain. That's our market in Denmark. And you probably have the same around your countries. So we need to go back and be more conscious about how many languages that we should learn. And it's German is a crappy language grammar-wise, but that is Danish as well. So we need to learn from each other and not just switch over to. We have been in conferences where two Danish people sitting talking English together. It's crazy.
So back to the future, or back to our roots was basically
Yes.
your answer. Minister Schwarz?
Look at the region, the border region between Schleswig-Holstein and Jutland. The closer you come to the border, both languages are used equal. And it's from the past we learn that it's go up and down and we will find it. But for the work, we need a short solution. And why not using KI? If you take today your smartphone and speak on it in German, it comes out in Danish. So for the short run, that's it. But for the long run, we have to go to school, and that's what we with this region have a arrangement. And this morning with Zeeland and Schleswig-Holstein, we go to education and do something on the languages. And even if we use in future English, it's the world language. Even if they left the EU, it's the world language. And we are using it for the future. Everyone is able to use some words in English.
Yeah, so it's not a zero-sum game, you know.
There's a possibility to use KI in future if you have very specialized word or some special work to be done, very precise, you maybe use KI.
Sue and then Michael.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to put some negativity to this discussion, but I actually think the battle has been lost.
Yeah.
We have this joke in Norway that the Danes speak English to each other because they don't understand Danish. So when I was in Copenhagen in May, the first language that you met in every store and every restaurant was English, actually. So,
that's because it's Swedish in the Danish stores in Copenhagen.
or other people. So, but I think that we should have an ambition to know at least one common language really well, and English is the obvious answer. And also, if we're going to be big exporters and communicate with the whole world, there should know English. But on the other side, I think that the Scandinavian languages should be able to talk to each other without using English.
Yeah.
So that's my hope, at least.
Yeah. And it used to be also a very good code language. I remember when I was minister, you could always speak to your Swedish counterpart and the others would not be able to understand it. So it is an advantage. So you have to be able to speak it. But Mikael?
Yeah, well, no doubt that language is important. I see when I come to Copenhagen that Swedish is the first language being spoken there because they have this very close relation and we have this very close relation. And it's true that when you're close to the border, then Danish and German are equal. But you don't have to move very far from the border. Then German is already almost forgotten, and the young people don't want to learn it. And I think actually one of the reasons is that Danish is a hard language, German is a hard language, and we have like a tendency that when we learn it in school, we have to be like strict. We have to learn the right way to say it. But this is just about communication. You know, that we can talk with each other. Then never mind that we say some grammatics wrong. You know, we get the understanding. Let's try and make language, and especially the important languages, a bit more fun to learn. Then if we have to work with it later on, when we grow up, we can perfectionate it and speak it for real. But let's just try and make it a little bit more fun, you know, so you don't have to have these strict, rules about it. I think that could be a way of doing it. We are trying different things in the region of southern Denmark to make German, I would say, a bit more sexy again, because it has lost its...
So you're skipping the German grammar or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a problem in many levels, you could say, because we also need the teachers to learn our young people, because they are also gone. So, you know, this is looking, way ahead.
So make languages more sexy, make this region more sexy, I guess could also be kind of a conclusion here. Linda, there's a question here which I'm sure that you will have an interesting response to. Name 3 initiatives that would move more people and goods over to cross-border rail.
That would be building a new main rail core. I've been a lot to the north at LKAB in Kiruna, and I mean the rails, they're putting their goods, 45% of their goods are traveling by railway, and it's in horrible state. And you know, in Sweden, like Fredrik Reinfeldt said, we see infrastructure as small regional projects that are just for Sweden. It's like we have the right-wing politics, the anti-globalization, everything is really affecting the infrastructure project. And we are maintaining and perhaps building a small piece of a rail, but it's not really finished and we don't have money. I mean, we haven't just lift our eyes and see what do we need to have a modern railway that all our green steel can be using so we can actually be this export country. We have the woods, we have the steel, we have the energy. Let's export it to the rest of Europe. And unfortunately, the Swedish government, ruled by the moderate party, has made a political conflict that in Sweden we are just travel in small labor regions, and that's the only thing we do. Perhaps we travel 30 minutes by train, they made a conflict between maintaining labor market communication or building high-speed main core, and because of the right-wing communication. Right now, all of the infrastructure is on pause, and they are seeing maybe we can have a little bit Stockholm, Uppsala, and maybe we can have some of the north. But the whole big picture of exporting goods and traveling from Stockholm to Hamburg. I mean, the trains are from the 70s. It's not a pleasure to go by them to your summer holidays. This was not three things, but I think I made my point that you have to build infrastructure and not seeing infrastructure projects as the same way that you finance buying a house, where it's a payoff to your entire life. We have to see infrastructure as a life cycle project and not something that has to be in our political one-year budget.
Excellent. I hope the infrastructure of this tent is stable. I think the final question here, and it's very relevant also as a way to sum up this panel. Who is responsible for a cross-regional vision, a master plan, and what should the milestones be? So who is responsible? There are probably many actors here, but who is the most important one? Thomas, I can see that this is something you've done quite some thinking about. And it's apparently not the nation states or the governments. So who is it then? Or we cannot do this without the governments, I presume.
Well, as I have indicated, I think you can clearly see a growing regionalization of Europe. This, of course, falls very well in the eyes of the EU Commission, who always is competing with the national state. Less influence for the capitals, more for Brussels. But actually, you can see, and whether that is because of war, pandemic, whatever, there is a very, very strong tendency here, as well as in other regions in Europe, of a regionalization. And what does that mean? Well, that in fact, you collaborate, you make business, you make, etc., cross-border in a region. And that's not bad, because national borders are often a result of wars that were fought 400 years ago. Maybe these borders do not correspond to the need of today. And I think this is a very good example of a common understanding and identity, if you may. I wish we also had a language here. for ourselves, but it has. We are sitting here today because we have something in common. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So this in itself is a sign of this regionalization, and of course we can do more. I do think that the regions have the responsibilities. They have to take the responsibilities. They cannot wait for the national governments anymore.
So the regions. Any other?
Not regions in like a Danish constitutional understanding.
I got that. Yeah, definitely. Any other sort of suggestions, yes, you?
Well, both regional organizations, type of organizations where many regions come together to cooperate, where they can agree on a vision, and then go home to their region and vote this and make this come true, and then talk to their national governments. But also the EU level is also a level that are thinking across borders. So all the entities that are thinking across borders, so the regional institutions and the over national level are the entities that are natural for this cause, actually.
And if we make sort of kind of a plan with milestones, what should be up there as the first or the second or the third?
First of all, I guess we have to be clear what is the future, what is the aim, what are the goals.
Yeah.
And when we know about that, we can go to the upper level, to the Berlin level or to the Brussels level from the German side. And if everyone on this panel do the same, we somewhere meet in Brussels, and that's it. I guess Brussels itself don't have very focused interest on this region. But when it's coming from down up, from the bottom up, we will change something. And I guess what I learned about Brussels, they need a starting point. And then it grows in an area. And I think this cross-border connection with the Fehmarnbelt, it's really one point. Denmark invests a lot of money and a lot of human power in this project. And I guess that will bring it up to the national government and to the European government, so we get the support to become a closer growing area. That's my opinion about that.
Very concrete, Lars.
Yep. You have the upside down vision, like Kennedy's. We're going to place a man on the moon by the end of this decade, not because we have the funds, not because we have the technology, but So that's the top down vision, and I don't think we have politicians growing that kind of visions today. I haven't heard them for a while anyway, but we have seen some bottom up vision as well.
Yeah.
I'm also a member of the City Council in Roskilde, and we in the Economical Committee went to Lund, our twin city, same size, two cathedrals, very alike, just 1 hour away. And we saw the similarities, and they're building a big.
On both,
universities, they're building a big science park, and we have the Technical University at Risø, and we have Roskilde University, and we have all that. And we saw the connection that we could build a kind of technical science region there. But we also the week after the business committee went to Finland and seeing the transition of Nokia and some of the other things there. So I think that on a university level, we have a region in Denmark, Sweden, Norway anyway, Finland, talking about how we can be a science region. You're still using facts in Germany, so you're not a part of that region. But we have a lot of science talents in the Nordic region. That's one region. Yeah. Then we have the green mega region with the power-to-X stations and the hydrogen that we make in string. That's another kind of region, energy region. And then we have the cultural and tourism regions with the cathedrals and all the international tourism. For instance, we were in Hamburg a couple of years ago with the business committee. We have a big office, Danish office in Hamburg, trying to get all the Germans by digital communication going to Denmark as tourists. So we have a lot of regions within the region. And if it's not music, it's Medical Valley, it's Technical Valley, it's Educational Valley, it's Green Valley, it's everything. So I think that the region consists of a lot of regions with people with different interests, and they get together and they build strong regions. And that's the collaboration between those different matters and themes and daily life of these people, whether they are musicians or craftsmanships or university teachers or priests or whatever. They come together in their region and meeting the others, and that's what makes the northern, the region that we're living in, a fantastic region with a lot of potential.
Let's stop there, because that was a very nice way of putting it. A fantastic region, but also your point about overlapping regions, almost also concentric circles of regions, as one would call it. So let's give them a big hand of applause. And I've written down here what you promised that you will do once you get back home. So I will, I'll give you a call at a certain stage to see whether you are whether you actually did what you told you would do. Otherwise, I'm sure Thomas will give you a call. Okay, we have now almost reached the end of today's event. And I think that you basically were able to combine Elvis and Reagan in a very elegant manner. And I'm sure, talking about elegance, that our three gentlemen that will now join me up here and who will present sort of their closing remarks will also live up to that characterization. So let's have up here the mayor of Lolland Kommune. Yes, there you are. Holger Skov Rasmussen. Give him a big hand of support. Then we have Christian Vedel Nergård, Vice Chairman of Region Sjælland. And last but not least, we have Reinhard Zager, Landrat from Kreis Ostholstein. Yes. And we have agreed that you will start. So the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, at the end of a conference, it is time to look back. Over these past 2 days, we have collected new ideas and inspiration, and above all, we have met with partners and friends across borders. And if you look back further, we can see that there's a history to our cooperation and friendship across the Fehmarnbelt. From the German-Danish Week in 1977 to the founding of the Fehmarnbelt Committee in 1929 to the 6th Fehmarnbelt Days 2023, the belt has become more of a link than a barrier. This is a reason for celebration and is not to be taken for granted, as we had to learn painfully 2 years ago. In 2021, the county of Ostholstein had the honor of hosting the Fehmarnbelt Days. We had planned a festival and a conference, and we had prepared for hundreds of people to meet and share their ideas in Ostholstein. But in the end, the corona pandemic made travel impossible and shut down the borders. That put the European spirit to the test all over the continent. So in 2021, we used digital means and held a successful online conference with more than 500 participants, many of whom are here today. But the opportunity to meet and speak with each other in person is essential for good cooperation and for a good neighborhood. The lesson learned should be to keep our borders open and find common solutions for transnational challenges like a pandemic. The key to European peace and freedom and prosperity lies in good neighborly relations. Therefore, building a new trans-European infrastructure connection makes it all the more important to look at the immediate cross-border region, the islands of Lolland and Falster, the region Sealand, the island of Fehmarn, the county of Ostholstein. We are right here at the heart of the Fehmarnbelt region. It is this rather small cross-border region that draws closer together and makes the European, Scandinavian, Mediterranean connection possible. For the Fehmarnbelt Days to come, this means that the successful mingling of two dimensions should be kept. There should be the opportunity for international problem solving for the challenges of our time in connection with local and regional perspectives and participation. It is good to see so many interested and active stakeholders assembled here in this cross-border region on the Isle of Lolland that we have called Fehmarn Region for Decades. The name is made, Fehmarnbelt Region for Decades. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I hand over to the actual chairman of the Fehmarnbelt Committee, my best friend, Holger Sko Rasmussen. Many thanks.
Thank you, Reinhard. And I would also like to use this opportunity to reflect on today's conference and how things have changed since the last Fehmarnbelt Days at Weißenhäuser Strand. I see a lot of family faces today, and I know many of you have taken part in quite a few conferences about the fixed link. Still, the mood for this conference is very different. Holding the conference here in Rødbyhavn and seeing the gigantic scope of the building site makes it clear that the fixed link is no longer a vision of some unknown future. It is a reality. And I want to thank Fehmarn AS for opening up the door to take a look inside on the factory. Let's give them a hand. It is first felt at the local level, where construction is visible. London has become much more international in just a few years. The municipality has opened an international school in Maribo, and it is not just functioning, it is booming. New infrastructure is already changing traffic patterns in the Sealand region, and visionary business developers are beginning to plan accordingly. The decision by Pepper and Søne is to establish a business hub in Maribo is just one example of this. The future is undoubtedly green, fossil fuels will disappear, and new technologies will be developed to ensure cleaner production. We have talked a lot about the unique possibilities of the future Fehmarn region in this field. The region must be a hotspot for the development of new technologies. Stronger and better cooperation between universities and researchers will obviously benefit everyone. It is important, however, to not just focus on research and development. Most jobs and most business opportunities are found in production and services, and not just in the production and installation of green technologies either. Consumers will still want goods, tourists will still want inspiring hotels, and business will still need services, but they will all demand sustainability. In the Fehmarn region, we should not just offer clean technology, we must also offer easy and cheap access to renewable energy, because no production will be truly green without it. Today we have learned that much good can come from building a cross-border region. We have also learned that it's hard work to do so. And the first thing is starting with this also, and I would like to thank the team, the organization team around the last 2 days, so let us give them a hand also. And still, I'm full of optimism because we have not just talked about the future we want. We have talked about how the future can be built. I leave this conference with a feeling that we are now in the middle of realizing the potential. We are not just talking, we are also acting. On Lolland, at least we are. But there's still a long way to go. And at the end here, I would like to thank Løkke for bringing us through the last 2 days with skills, charm, and humor. It has been a pleasure to follow you. I hope to see you some other time, maybe in maybe in 2025, or it will probably be hold the Fehmarnbelt Days in Lübeck. See you. Christian.
On behalf of Regional Sjælland, I will also say thank you. It was funny to listen to the discussion about the name, because there are no doubt about the name. I went to INSEAD in the 80s, and our teacher that day, he was called Per Gyllenhammer. And Per Gyllenhammer, he was sitting there with a Scandinavian map in front of him. And then he put down his arm, and he said, "This is the Scandinavian link," which meant that this is the link that connects Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany. So Scandinavian link was Per Gyllenhammer's suggestion at that time. As you can understand, I've been around for many years. The last 20 years I've been working with Fehmarnbelt in many perspectives. And I've learned many people to know. And in this room, there are a lot of people that have used half of their life moving this project to where we are today. First of all, I will mention Flemming Hansen. He's not here, he is dead. But he was traffic minister when the Statsvertrag was given. And he came back to the Danish Folketing, and I was member of the conservative group. And he came there and he told us what he had been talking about in Berlin. That was a wonderful evening, a fantastic evening, where we went through all the details of the agreement with the Germans. And what was agreed on many years ago is now about to happen. Another great person in this area was Niels William. He was founder of Fehmarnbelt Development, and he saw very early that it was necessary to have a body that was talking about this project and that was serving everybody with information about the possibilities of building a fixed link. And here we have Sven Erik Hovman and we have Reinhard Sager, and them with many, many others have used half of their life working on this project, and I think we should give them a hand. Denmark is used to mega projects. We have the Storebælt fixed link, and they asked the former chairman of the conservative group, Knud Østergaard, why are we having a fixed link, a Storebælt bridge? And he said, it's because then the Copenhagen can have fresh milk. And what he didn't realize was the enormous change that the Storebælt fixed link made for the Danes. The traffic jumped to the doubled within a very short time. And now it's possible for everybody to go to Jutland, visit family, and go home the same day. And the traffic over Storebælt fixed link is immense. It was a little bit different with the Øresund's fixed link, because Øresund, I was member of the Øresund committee, and we discussed many projects, but it didn't turn out as we had been discussing for 10 years in the committee. Things developed completely different. But what we see today is a link between Sweden and Denmark, where knowledge and culture and other projects can exist on both sides of the border, and there is an immense traffic forwards and backwards. So that works. And that will be the same with this. When the fixed link Fehmarnbelt is finished, the traffic will jump to a much higher level. Many more people will travel forwards and backwards. For me, it has always been to build the cultural bridge. Building the bridge, I understand that we should put pressure on the German and Danish government to make sure that we finish in 29 and to make sure that everything works. I'm an optimist. I think that will work, but it's important that everybody talk to somebody about it. But the cultural bridge is the bridge between people. It's the bridge between hearts. It's the bridge between eyes. And that is the most important thing with the fixed link. It is to come closer, to be a good neighbor, to speak together, and to, I was about to say fall in love, but to be close to each other. And I think with the cultural bridge, that can be a green hub, as we have heard about today. It can be the cultural bridge. It can be tourists traveling forwards and backwards. It can be industry. The cultural bridge is the way that a project like this will develop societies north of and south of the bridge. And I'm sure that this will be of great success for this area. It will be of great success for the whole Scandinavian link, the whole link between Hamburg and Copenhagen and further to the north. So I'm sure we are in the beginning of a success. And they are now start building the tunnel, and within a few years we will be able to drive through. I'm looking forward to that day. That will really be a day. So thank you very much, and thank you for your patience that you have stand so long, and thank you for coming, and we will see you in 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And my task is simply just to say thank you, but also, as you said, this is the beginning of a success, but this is also the end of this event, except for those who have signed up for the dinner. Well, I'm not sure there'll be any Dosenbier, but because I think we killed the Dosenbier Verbindung. We still have to come up with a better name, but I'm sure that String and others will take care of that. So thank you very much.